business or on the order of the day for any stage of the bill being read, the member in charge of a bill may, without notice, claim to withdraw the bill. 2, if the Speaker is of the opinion that the claim is not an abuse of the procedures of the House, the Speaker shall direct that the bill shall be withdrawn. In this regard, and pursuant to provisions of the said standing order, I direct that the bill be withdrawn from the House business forthwith for the reasons given by the mover. Thank you, no members. The members making the way, please, just do it quickly. Those making their way in, please. Those coming in, please do come in. The other communication is going to take slightly longer than that. Or those who have already served the purpose for today's sitting, who are making their way out. Yeah, there are some who are withdrawing. Those who are coming in, please do so quickly. Honourable members, this communication relates to the issue of the accountability of the executive to Parliament and the place of the chief administrative secretaries in responding to questions in the National Assembly. You will recall that on Tuesday, 8th of October 2019, and during the statement hour, the Honourable Didimas Barasa, MP, the member for Kimilili, rose in his place on a point of order seeking the direction of the chair on the admissibility of answers to parliamentary questions from the executive given by the chief administrative secretaries. For clarity, the member for Kimilili stated as follows, in part, and I quote, "Today morning, I appeared before the Departmental Committee on Health to get a reply to a question I had asked. I refused the reply because it was coming from a chief administrative secretary, a person who is not in the Constitution," close the quotes. According to the member for Kimilili, a chief administrative secretary, popularly known as CAS, is unknown to both the Constitution and the standing orders of this House. By this argument, the member for Kimilili was advancing that accountability of the executive to Parliament, particularly with respect to answering any questions relating to matters under the jurisdiction of any of the line ministries, could only be enforced if appearances before the committees of the House is restricted to the responsible cabinet secretaries and or principal secretaries. Honourable members, the issue raised by the member attracted immense individual and representative capacities, as well as on the basis of matters arising from undertakings and assurances made by the executive to the House. Across parliaments, parliamentary questions enable parliaments to access relevant, timely, and actionable answers or information from the executive to enable it effectively discharge its mandate. Question time under the previous dispensation was an active process on the floor of the House, where both the questioners and the responsible ministers were present in the House, and supplementary questions could be raised and either be answered promptly or appropriate assurances or undertakings made during that sitting. Honourable members, question time was not only popular to members, but also to the general citizenry, who could watch and hear as their representatives put their government to task over issues of concern to them and receive prompt, pertinent responses and undertakings on record. This changed at the commencement of the 11th Parliament, the first under the new constitutional dispensation. The introduction of a presidential system of governance in which members of the cabinet are no longer members of Parliament resulted into the absence of representatives of the executive in the Houses of Parliament, and therefore effectively crippling the idea behind question time. As a result, various attempts to revitalize question time under the new constitutional dispensation were made by the 11th and even this 12th Parliament, culminating in the insertion of Part 9 of the National Assembly Standing Orders relating to questions. Those of you who served in the 11th Parliament would recall that the first attempt was a temporary substitution of question time with statements directed to chairpersons of relevant committees for a response as a way of attempting to align the new constitutional dispensation with the processes of Parliament, and more particularly, receiving answers to questions. In this new arrangement, questions asked by members were responded to in writing by the relevant cabinet secretaries, and the responses would be read out on the floor of the House by the chairpersons of the relevant departmental committees. Unfortunately, supplementary questions would never receive any responses or even adequate responses from the chairpersons, since they are not the authors of the statements that they read out. Honourable members, whereas this arrangement worked with difficulties in the interim, it will be recalled that chairpersons of committees faced challenges as they could not even comprehensively speak or even make any undertakings on behalf of the executive, which they are constitutionally expected also to oversight. In 2014, upon recommendations of the Procedure and House Rules Committee, the House considered provisions of Article 153 of the Constitution, which provides for the decisions, responsibility, and accountability of the Cabinet with a view to engendering proper accountability by the Executive to Parliament. For avoidance of doubt and for clarity, Article 153, clauses 3 and 4 read as follows, and I quote, 3. A Cabinet Secretary shall attend before a committee of the National Assembly or the Senate when required by the committee and answer any question concerning a matter for which the Cabinet Secretary is responsible. 4. Cabinet Secretary shall A. act in accordance with this Constitution, B. provide Parliament with full and regular reports concerning matters under their control, close the quotes. Honourable members, in another attempt to actualize the requirements of Article 153 of the Constitution and address the challenges faced, the temporary statements procedure, the House yet again amended its standing orders to establish a committee on general oversight and introduce Cabinet Secretary's reporting time. Cabinet Secretary's reporting time was intended to allow a Cabinet Secretary to make a report to the House on any matter under his or her charge. On the other hand, the Committee on General Oversight was intended to enable the attendance of Cabinet Secretaries before a committee of the whole House, chaired by the Speaker or the Deputy Speaker, to respond to questions raised by members and whose notice had been given. Honourable members, as you may recall, on the basis of the doctrine of separation of powers and functions among the arms of government, the arrangement for Cabinet Secretaries to be accountable to Parliament through the Committee on General Oversight was argued to be untenable by a section of the society who perceived the Committee on General Oversight as another sitting of a full House of Parliament. In view of the foregoing, I issued a ruling on 21st of October 2014 staying the provisions of the standing orders relating to the Committee on General Oversight and its operations. In that communication, I also directed the Procedure and House Rules Committee to spearhead consultations with a view to creating a mechanism providing for the accountability of the executive to the House while upholding the doctrine of separation of powers. This ruling, however, did not preclude Cabinet Secretaries from the obligation to appear before committees of this House and respond to questions by members every Tuesday morning. Honourable members, consequently, in the 12th Parliament, the Procedure and House Rules Committee recommended amendment to the standing orders to reintroduce questions in a manner that is not only consistent with the Constitution, but also able to link the process to the public affected by the issues raised by members through the questions. The proposals culminated in the introduction of Part 9, titled Questions, in the 4th edition of the National Assembly Standing Orders. Under this part, a member now reads his or her question on the floor of the House for the question to be recorded in the Hansard, and the responsible Cabinet Secretary is required to appear and respond to the question before the relevant departmental committee. It is worth noting that under Standing Order number 42A, subparagraph 5, the appointment of the date when the Cabinet Secretary responsible for a question to be responded to will appear before the relevant committee to answer the question is done and communicated to the House by the Leader of the Majority Party. I do hope that this background suffices to explain the milestones leading to the subsisting procedure on handling of parliamentary questions before this House. Honourable members, let me now address the first issue for determination, which is whether accountability of the Executive of the National Assembly with regard to responding to any questions before a committee of the House in terms of Article 153, Clause 3 of the Constitution is an exclusive function of Cabinet Secretaries or may be donated to Chief Administrative Secretaries. The central issue of concern to the Honorable Didymus Barasa, and indeed the House, is the question of accountability of the Executive to the House and the person through which such accountability is to be projected in the House. In addressing the issue, I will restate provisions of Article 153, Clause 3 of the Constitution, run together with Standing Order number 42A, paragraph 5, which domesticated Article 153, Clause 3 in the National Assembly Standing Orders. And it is indeed reproduced verbatim. Standing Order number 42A, Clause 5, gives effect to the provisions and provides as follows. A member shall ask his or her question on the day it is scheduled in the order paper, and the Leader of the Majority Party, at an appointed date, inform the House of the date and time when a Cabinet Secretary shall be required to appear before a committee to reply to a question, subject to paragraph 6. Honourable members, the wording of the stated provisions of the Constitution and the Standing Orders leaves no doubt as to the expectations of the House in terms of who is accountable to the House. In substance, Article 153, Clause 3 of the Constitution is couched in mandatory terms that vests direct constitutional obligation on a Cabinet Secretary with little or no latitude to a Cabinet Secretary delegating that authority with regard to appearing and answering questions relating to their duties when required so to do by the House. A Cabinet Secretary is therefore under an obligation to appear before a committee of Parliament and to answer any question concerning a matter for which he or she is responsible. Additionally, as provided for in Article 153, Clause 4 of the Constitution, the Cabinet Secretary must provide Parliament with full and regular reports concerning matters under his or her control. And honourable members, here I note that we haven't been receiving any reports regularly or even otherwise from many of the Cabinet Secretaries, if not all. And the House can therefore proceed to deal with them in accordance with the Constitution. Honourable members, I therefore do agree with the position held by the Honourable Member for Kimilili that the Constitution envisages Cabinet Secretaries as the principal link between the Executive and the Legislature. This is born out of their responsibility to attend committees of Parliament and regularly report to Parliament on matters that they are responsible for, as well as the fact that this House approves their appointments to various dockets and initiates the process of their removal from office under Article 152 of the Constitution. Honourable members, over and above construing the provisions of Article 153, clauses 3 and 4 of the Constitution in the context of their substance, there is a second limb to it. That is the process of achieving the intended goals, which process is determined by the House pursuant to the provisions of Article 124 of the Constitution, which is the article that gives the House the responsibility to come up with its own rules. This now begs another question for me, which is, does Article 153, clauses 3 and 4 also imply that the obligation by a Cabinet Secretary to provide full and regular reports to Parliament cannot be achieved unless the Cabinet Secretary appears in person before Parliament or its committees? Honourable members, in attempting to answer this question, for process of the business of the House, it is worth noting that other than Cabinet Secretaries, Article 155 of the Constitution establishes the positions of Principal Secretaries, tasked with administering state departments under their dockets. Principal Secretaries are essentially the accounting officers of the ministries. They offer primary responses to any audit queries under consideration by the Public Accounts Committee in the scrutiny of national expenditure by Parliament. Invariably, responses provided by Cabinet Secretaries on a matter raised by the House rely on information collated by the Principal Secretaries from either their departments or the various agencies falling under such departments. Indeed, as members will recollect, a Cabinet Secretary is often accompanied to committee meetings by the relevant Principal Secretary and technical officers drawn from the ministry and state agencies who assist the Cabinet Secretary to provide relevant and actionable information to the committees. The practice in other common parliamentary jurisdictions supports the link between membership of the Cabinet and accountability to Parliament. In the House of Commons of the United Kingdom, only ministers are allowed to answer questions on the floor of the House, despite there being parliamentary secretaries who are effectively assistant ministers and parliamentary undersecretaries who assist them in the discharge of their duties. In the Parliament of New Zealand, in addition to addressing questions to a minister, a member may address a question to an associate minister within the limits of any responsibilities formally delegated to a minister. Additionally, members of Parliament designated as parliamentary undersecretaries are mandated to respond to a question on behalf of an absent minister. However, a question cannot be addressed to a parliamentary undersecretary. The fundamental difference being between our legislature and these two Westminster-style legislatures is that, in our case, the cabinet comprises of persons who are not members of Parliament. Honourable members, in the case of our legislative setup, the eventual aim of the House is to have responses to questions made by competent, legitimate, and authorized persons in an accurate, timely, and authoritative manner so as to assist the House to attempt to resolve issues of concern to the people and discharge its oversight role over the executive, pursuant to the provisions of Article 95 and 153, Clause 3 of the Constitution. In this regard, it ought not to be lost that the Cabinet Secretary is an office rather than a person. Hence, it is arguable that an authorized representative of the Cabinet Secretary may, acting on delegated and/or donated powers, respond to a matter before a committee, as long as he or she takes full responsibility for the answers and undertakings given by the executive to the committee of the whole House. This is in tandem with the established practice whereby some questions are responded to through oral replies by the responsible Cabinet Secretary appearing in person some through a written reply signed by the responsible cabinet secretary and submitted to the committee. Other questions are responded to through oral submissions made by representatives of cabinet secretaries who presents the responses signed by the responsible cabinet secretary. Honourable members, the practice I have just mentioned is a product of this House. Members will note that even though the current text of our standing orders 42A to 42F envisages a cabinet secretary as the person to whom all questions are addressed and from whom all responses are expected, and a review of the Hansen report during the consideration of the amendments to the standing orders to reintroduce questions suggests that members contended with the fact that on some occasions, responses to questions may be made by persons other than cabinet secretaries. While moving the second report of the Procedural and House Rules Committee on the said amendments, the Deputy Speaker, the Honorable Moses Cheboy, said, and I quote, "I urge the House to adopt these amendments as contained in the second report of the Procedural and House Rules Committee. It is my considered opinion that in operationalizing these amendments, the House and its committees will need to strike a fair balance with regard to appearance in person of CSs to answer questions in committees. I understand that CSs and principal secretaries can be very busy. Between PSs and CSs, the CS can respond to questions. Anybody who is above the rank of PS can appear to answer questions. For example, if the chief administrative secretaries, in brackets CASs, are above the rank of PS, they can respond to questions, close the quotes. The Deputy Speaker's position was supported by the majority party whip, the Honorable Benjamin Washiali, who, while contributing to the debate, stated as follows, I quote, "To me, the question of CSs being too busy to attend to questions is neither here nor there, because with the introduction of the chief administrative secretaries, when CSs are busy dealing with other issues of development, the CASs can stand in for them so that the aspect of answering questions is not defined," close the quotes. Honourable members, despite these particular observations not being included in the text of the standing orders, it currently guides the procedure of committees with regard to the consideration of questions. Further, from the report of the committee and the debate that ensued in the House during the adoption of the standing orders 42A to 42F, there is no doubt that the House intended to permit chief administrative secretaries to also appear before committees to respond to questions on behalf of the cabinet secretaries. Honourable members, having said that, you may agree with me that to hold that cabinet secretaries as the only persons who may engage with or appear before Parliament or its committees will create an unnecessary impediment to the conduct of the business of the House. The House has established committees in which majority of its work is now conducted. The fact that an increasing amount of work is committed to committees whose operations run concurrently has created a need for constant interaction with the executive. The duty to attend and answer questions before committees and to regularly report to Parliament, if enforced in the strictest sense of the substance of Article 153, would therefore mean that some committees will have to await the availability of cabinet secretaries before considering relevant matters placed before them. The wait could not only be indefinite if one were to take into account the official duties of the affected cabinet secretaries, but also imply that a lot of business would lapse without the requisite reply being provided by the substantive cabinet secretaries. Honourable members, the prerogative of Parliament to hold the executive to account ought to be exercised in a manner that enables it to effectively discharge its mandate as given by the people. I'm cognizant that Joint Executive Order number 1 of 2018 on the organization of government, the President communicated to Parliament the manner in which he had decided to reorganize his government. The executive order, additionally, identifying the principal persons charged with the overall direction of the various ministries. Apart from the cabinet secretaries charged with overseeing the various ministries, a key feature was the inclusion of principal secretaries and the chief administrative secretaries. As it is now, an executive order under the hand and seal of the President has communicated to the House that a chief administrative secretary is one of the 3 ranking officials in the executive. Honourable members, any person to whom the power to govern is entrusted is subject to constant oversight by this House. As a Speaker, I am obligated to ensure that this House stretches its oversight capabilities to such person or persons to whom the Constitution, statute, or lawfully issued orders, such as the Executive Order number 1 of 2018, is assigned authority to govern. My opinion is in harmony with that of my predecessor at the early years of our independence, Speaker Humphrey Slint, who on the 3rd of July 1963 made the following observation, and I quote, "The chair remains in a unique position to safeguard in a singular form the right of members to bring the ministers to account and the executive in general for their actions. Parliamentary questions, therefore, serve as a true parliamentary mechanism to bring the executive and indeed those who govern to be accountable to those being governed." Close the quotes. Honourable members, I'm therefore of the considered opinion that in holding the executive to account, the House must take into account its prevailing structure as communicated to it by the President. In this regard, I am persuaded that for purposes of facilitating the conduct of business of the House, apart from treating the Cabinet Secretary as the officer primarily accountable to Parliament, a room does exist for our committees to permit the conveyance of timely and actionable responses to questions before committees through the Principal Secretary and or the Chief Administrative Secretary. Honourable members, in summary, without excusing Cabinet Secretaries from their constitutional responsibility to the House must therefore consider a workable alternative that allows it to obtain relevant, timely, and actionable information from ministries to enable it discharge its mandate. Such information may be presented either by the Cabinet Secretary in person or in exceptional circumstances and for good reason, presented on his or her behalf by a person of suitable rank, expressly mandated to do so in writing. This, in my opinion, should settle then the first issue for determination. Therefore, Cabinet Secretaries who are not able to attend must, in writing, designate the persons not below the rank of Principal Secretary, the responsibility to represent them before committees. Honourable members, the second issue that the member for Kimilili invited the Speaker to guide on is whether the establishment of the offices of Chief Administrative Secretaries and subsequent appointment of holders of those offices offends the Constitution or in any way affects the transaction of business of the House in our committees. On this matter, honourable members, I hasten to draw the attention of the House that following the creation of the position of Chief Administrative Secretaries, 2 petitions were filed with the High Court challenging the creation of those positions on constitutional grounds. These are the Nairobi High Court Constitutional Petition number 33 of 2018, as consolidated with the petition number 42 of 2018, namely Okia Omtata Okoiti and the Kenya Human Rights Commission versus the Speaker of the National Assembly and 74 others. I don't know where those others are. The petitions are pending full hearing and determination before the High Court. There is also another related matter filed also at Nairobi High Court as Constitutional Petition number 67 of 2018. Parties Marilyn Mudhoni Kamuru, and 2 others for the Speaker of National Assembly and others, which is also yet to be determined. I therefore find that the question of constitutionality or otherwise of the position of Chief Administrative Secretaries to be a matter that is res sub judice in terms of a standing order number 89. In this regard, I decline to render any opinion or guidance on that matter, except to observe that, as your Speaker, I have a duty to ensure that the transaction of the business of the House is facilitated as necessary to proceed. Honourable members, in summary, I wish to guide as follows: that as first and cardinal responsibility, pursuant to the provisions of Article 153, Clauses 3 and 4 of the Constitution, Cabinet Secretaries are expected to and must appear before committees of the House as and when required to do so, to answer questions and to examine other matters before the committees. Number 2, that at the same time, Chief Administrative Secretaries remain admitted to committees of this House for purposes of transacting the businesses contemplated under Part 9 of the standing orders, which is questions, as long as they are able to commit their respective state departments to the undertakings, commitments, and assurances they may have to make in the course of responding to questions before committees. 3, that committees remain at liberty to determine on a case-by-case basis whether it is the Cabinet Secretary or the Chief Administrative Secretary, or indeed the Principal Secretary, wish to appear before them to answer questions and how often they may do so. They should take into account the weight of the matters contained in the questions before the committee. Essentially, honourable members, the committee should be able to determine what is the weight of the question. Can those other people, other than the Cabinet Secretary, be able to respond? 4th, that whenever a Cabinet Secretary authorizes a Chief Administrative Secretary to respond to questions before committees, the Cabinet Secretary shall take full responsibility of responses transmitted to the National Assembly. In this regard, the written responses ought to be signed by the particular Cabinet Secretaries to denote the authorization and taking of responsibility. Honourable members, this guidance serves as an avenue for allowing the conveyance of a written and signed response to a matter raised by this House or a question by a person authorized by a particular Cabinet Secretary. The guidance is not a carte blanche for Cabinet Secretaries to disregard their constitutional responsibility of accounting to the people's representatives for their actions in the performance of their constitutional duties. The House is accordingly guided. I thank you. Next order.
Order number 3, messages.
Honourable members, those who are coming in or those who are walking out, please do so quickly. Member for Migori, I'm sure are walking out. You have overstayed in the chamber, I think. Honourable members, you may recall that on the 26th of September 2019, the National Assembly passed the Finance Bill, National Assembly Bill number 51 of 2019. Thereafter, the bill was presented for assent to His Excellency the President in accordance with the provisions of the Constitution and was standing orders. However, His Excellency the President, by way of a memorandum dated 16th of October 2019, has since referred the bill back to the National Assembly for reconsideration, pursuant to the provisions of Article 115, Clause 1, Paragraph B of the Constitution. The President has expressed reservations to Clause 45 of the bill, which relates to capping of interest rates chargeable on loans advanced by banks and other financial institutions. In his memorandum, the President highlights several factors that have necessitated the proposed amendment to Clause 45 of the bill, which seeks to amend the Banking Act, Cap 488, by repealing Section 33B so as to remove capping of interest rates chargeable on loans. Honour members, these include the following. 1, the reduction of credits to the private sector, particularly micro, small, and medium enterprises. 2, the decline in economic growth. 3, the weakening of the effectiveness of monetary policy. 4, the reduction of loan advances by banks. 5, the mushrooming of Shylocks and other unregulated lenders in the financial sector. 6, the withdrawal of banks lending to specific segments of the market. 7, the increase in average loan size, reflecting lower access by small borrowers and larger loans to most established firms. And 8, the decreased diversity of loan products. Consequently, the President recommends an amendment to the same clause of the bill so as to resolve the above concerns. Honourable members, the reservation of the President, as contained in his memorandum, now stands committed to the Departmental Committee on Finance and National Planning for consideration. Standing under number 154, Clause 2, requires the House to consider the President's reservations within 21 days upon receipt of the memorandum. In this regard, the committee ought to table its report soonest to allow the House to consider the President's reservations within the same timeline. In considering the reservation, the committee is expected to additionally apply itself to the question of the commencement date of the provision and the effect of the proposed amendment with regard to existing loan contracts between lenders, that is, banks and other financial institutions and borrowers. Honourable members, may I at this point remind the House of the Speaker's communication delivered on 28th of July 2015 concerning the consideration of President's reservations to a bill and amendments thereto. I particularly draw your attention to my guidance that the voting threshold for the passage of amendments proposed by a committee or an additional member or an individual member that have the effect of fully accommodating the President's reservations is simple majority, as contemplated under Article 122, Clause 1 of the Constitution, read together with Article 115, Clause 2, Paragraph A. On the other hand, an amendment that does not fully accommodate the President's reservations, or indeed one that has the effect of total override of the President's reservations, including negating his proposed text, would require a 2/3 voting threshold to be passed in keeping with the provisions of Article 115, Clause 4 of the Constitution. I wish to further reiterate that only the specific clause, honourable members, I wish to reiterate that only the specific clause of the bill that has reservations, namely Clause 45, ought to be considered. And I direct the clerk to circulate the memorandum from His Excellency the President to all members so that you familiarize yourselves with its contents. I thank you, honourable members. Honourable members, Leader of Majority, what's the...
No, Mr. Speaker, I think you have read the President's memoranda and the criteria, but Mr. Speaker, I think as a committee discuss, they need to find a transitional clause that at when will it take into effect, and what happens to the Kenyans, millions of Kenyans who are paying now interest at a certain percentage. So we need to find out a transitional clause, Speaker.
That is contained in the message. No, that is already contained in my message. Proceed. Next order.
Order number 4, petitions. Order number 5, papers.
What is? Leader of the majority party?
Majority party.
Leader. That's.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I don't know why people are making a lot of noise, because I have counted the numbers. How many are Tanga, how many are ODM, how many are Keleweke. So,
I thought this time for Nini. This is time for papers.
Honorable Speaker, I beg to lay the following papers on the table of the House. Today, Thursday, October 17, 2019, the annual report and financial statements of the Kenya Investment Authority for the year ended 30th June 2018, and the report of the Auditor General on the financial statements of Kenya Airports Authority for the year ended 30th June 2018, and the certificate therein. You know, this one, he wants me to name
The Chairman, Departmental Committee on Justice and Legal Affairs, Honorable Cheptumo.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Honorable Speaker, I beg to lay the following paper on the table of the House. Today, Thursday, October 17, 2019. Report of the Departmental Committee on Justice and Legal Affairs on its consideration of the petition regarding the unethical conduct of the Registrar of Companies by Mr. Samuel Madheri Hungu. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Chairperson, Departmental Committee on Lands. Honorable Ajuki, on behalf of Chair, very well.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker. I beg to lay the following paper on the table of the House today, Thursday, 17th, 2019, the report on the Departmental Committee on Lands on its consideration of a petition by Hatua Yetu community-based organization regarding impeding eviction from Masului Trust land. Thank you.
Very well. Chairman, Departmental Committee on Communication, Information and Technology. Honorable Kisai.
Honorable Speaker, I beg to lay the following paper on the table of the House today, Thursday, October 17, 2019. Report of the Departmental Committee on Communication, Information and Innovation on the consideration of the Data Protection Bill, National Assembly Bill number 44 of 2019. Thank you, Honorable Speaker.
Chairman, Special Files Committee, Accounts Committee. Honorable Kaduri.
Honorable Speaker, I request that I do the tabling later on because I understand the reports are in office, Mr. Speaker. If possible, I can be around to do it later on, Mr. Speaker.
But the reports are not ready.
They are ready, but I have just learned from my clerk that they are on your desk, Mr. Speaker. Maybe they brought them a bit late for your signature.
They can only have landed on my desk after 2:30.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying, Mr. Speaker.
I had gone through all the other reports that were brought and approved. Now, if they are there, it is not possible that you can table them later because I may not have the opportunity to go through them. My work cannot be just to append the signature.
Mr. Speaker, we can do it another day, Mr. Speaker.
Some other date, yes.
Yeah, thank you.
Very well, Honorable Kaduri. The Chairman, Environment and Natural Resources, Honorable Karek Mbuki.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. On Speaker, I beg to lay the following papers on the table of the House. Today, Thursday, October 17, 2019. Report on the Departmental Committee on Environment and Natural Resources on an inquiry on the status of dams in Kenya. I thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Very well. Next order.
Order number 6, notices of motion.
Honorable Karek Mbuki.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I beg to give notice of the following motion, that this House adopts the report of the Departmental Committee on Environment and Natural Resources on the inquiry on the status of dams in Kenya, laid on the table of the House on Thursday, October 17, 2019. I thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Next order.
Order number 7, questions and statements.
First question by the member for Dagoretti South. Honorable John Kiari.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. And I rise to ask a question by private notice, number 40 of 2019, Mr. Speaker. One, this question is directed to the Cabinet Secretary of Interior and National Coordination. One, can the Cabinet Secretary for Interior and National Coordination explain why the registration clerks who are involved in the National Identity Integrated Management System, commonly known as Huduma Number registration exercise, are yet to be paid in full almost 5 months after the completion of this exercise, Mr. Speaker? And two, what measures has the ministry put in place to ensure that these registration clerks are paid in full, the said allowances in full without any further delay, Mr. Speaker? Thank you very much.
Question referring to the Committee on Administration and National Security, and to note, the committee knows that there is a question by private notice. I can see the Vice Chair is present. It's a question by private notice, but the question is referred to you. No problem. You deal with it. Next question by private notice, member for West Pokot County, Honorable Lillian Tomitom.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I rise to ask a question by private notice. Question number 41 of 2019 to the Cabinet Secretary for Devolution, Arid and Semi-Arid Areas. Question 1. Are there plans by the ministry to provide relief food and other humanitarian support to the residents of West Pokot, and in particular, Kacheliba and Sigor sub-counties, to address the acute hunger being experienced in the area as a result of prolonged drought situation? My second question, Mr. Speaker, is that what immediate and long-term mitigation measures have been put in place to mitigate the effect of drought in these areas? Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Question referring to the Departmental Committee on Administration and National Security again, to prioritize. Next question by the member for Luanda, the Honorable Christopher Umlele.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker. I rise to ask question number 458 of 2019 to the Cabinet Secretary for Transport, Infrastructure, Housing and Urban Development as to why has the construction of Maseno-Kombewa Road, which was awarded to MC Agrimac Consortium Limited under contract number 119 during the financial year 2015-2016 stalled for the last 24 months. Roman 2, could the Cabinet Secretary confirm that the construction carried out so far on the said road meets the set quality and standards? Roman 3, what steps is the ministry taking to ensure that the construction of the said road, which is currently in a deplorable state, is completed as soon as possible, considering that the contract period for its construction has since expired? Thank you, Honorable Speaker.
Question referring to the Committee on Transport and Public Works and Housing. Sorry, honour members who may have looked at the order paper will notice that the next question was by the member for Malava, the Honourable Malulu Ijedi, but he has requested for its deferment, which request has been acceded to. So we move to statements. First statement by the member for Baringo Central, Joshua Kadie.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker. I, pursuant to Standing Order 44-2C, I wish to request for a statement from the chairperson of the Departmental Committee on Education and Research on funding of special needs education in the country. Honorable Speaker, the number of primary boarding institutions offering special education as per the government standards has increased from 243 in 2016 to 339 in 2019, with the total enrollment likewise increasing from 26,900 to 39,629 learners during the same period. For secondary schools, the number of institutions has increased from 106 to 114, with the enrollment increasing from 4,019 to 5,500. Honorable Speaker, it is of great concern that despite this increment in facilities and enrollment, the government's capitation grant for special needs primary boarding and special and integrated schools and units has remained at constant figure of 455 million, which in essence means that the allocation per learner has reduced from 16,914 in 2016 to 11,481 in 2019. On its part, the secondary schools allocations has remained at a constant figure of 200 million, which technically implies a reduction per learner from 49,763 to 35,730. Honorable Speaker, the purpose of special needs schools grants is to subsidize boarding expenses in view of the fact that most special needs learners attend boarding schools on account of them having requisite human resources and facilities, and not by choice. To meet remuneration costs of critical auxiliary staff such as transcribers, sign language interpreters, therapists, and house parents, as well as procurement of specialized learning resources such as braillers and other assistant devices. Honorable Speaker, the allocation to the special needs subsector as received in the recent past has been too inadequate to meet the aforementioned needs of institutions that offer special needs education. And most special needs education schools are currently facing financial crisis, exemplified by unpaid remuneration of non-teaching staff, as well as pending bills owed to suppliers. Honorable Speaker, it is on account of these ongoing challenges occasioned by underfunding of special needs education that I seek statement from the chairperson of the Departmental Committee on Education and Research on the following. 1, what short and long-term measures are being pursued by the government in allocating sufficient funding to special needs education subsector? 2, is the Ministry of Education in possession of updated data on special needs education that places the optimal allocation for special needs education learners in primary boarding and secondary schools at 30,000 and Kenya shillings 57,000 per annum respectively? I thank you, Honorable Speaker.
Statement is from the chair of Education Committee. The chair will respond when the House resumes. The next question is, next request by Honorable Osotsi.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Honorable Speaker,
pursuant to Standing Order 44-2C, I wish to request for a statement from the chairperson of the Departmental Committee on Lands regarding the forceful eviction carried out by security forces on the 9th October 2019 in Kapcheturo Village, Kaptobogen location, Kiptuya Ward, Chesumei Sub-County, Nandi County. Honorable Speaker, there has been a long-standing legal dispute regarding land LR number Nandi/Kapkangani/1371-1384 since 1979 between 1. Mr. Kipkosigei Arab Cheptul and Tito Amalemba and 9 others on behalf of the affected families through civil suit number 794 of 1979, which has since been heard and determined. Honorable Speaker, thereafter, through an eviction order, forceful eviction of the affected families, totaling about 1,500 persons, were carried out where their houses were demolished, crops destroyed, and some graves exhumed. This has resulted in dire humanitarian crisis due to lack of basic needs for the victims. In addition, school-going children are not able to attend school, including those about to sit national exams. Honorable Speaker, in July 2019, the Cabinet Secretary for Lands, accompanied by the then County Commissioner and a security team, visited the land and assured the victims that they would not be evicted until the government finds a solution to the land problem. The Cabinet Secretary assured the affected families that the government had 2 options: to either compensate the individual claiming ownership or allow the affected families to continue occupying the land or resettle the affected families on a new piece of land to be. Honorable Speaker, in the statement that I'm seeking, the chairperson should inform the House on the following. 1, whether a requisite notice was given to the victims before evictions were carried out. 2, why security forces used excessive force in evicting peaceful peasant farmers. 3, why the government has been slow in providing humanitarian support to the victims, including school-going children, especially those about to sit exams. 4, the circumstances in which numerous households in Kiptuya and Kapkangani areas have been issued with eviction orders on land that they have occupied for many years. 5, whether there are any plans by the government to compensate the affected families for the losses incurred during the eviction exercise, and further, whether there are any plans to either compensate the individuals claiming ownership or allow the affected family to continue occupying the land as promised by the Cabinet Secretary, and the timelines for the same. Mr. Speaker, this is a very serious matter. The affected families are in the cold. It is raining, and we would like this matter prioritized. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Well, I'm sure you have looked at the calendar of the House. So the committee, at the rise of the House today, the House will proceed, of course, on the short 1-week recess. So yes, I hear you that it is very serious matter, but all matters raised here are very serious. So it will be considered alongside other serious matters by the Committee on Lands, and if within the period that is available to them, they are not able to, they will come to the House and request for time, because you have raised several issues which may require quite some extensive engagement with various players. But anyhow, the request is given to the Committee on Lands. The next request for statement is by Honorable Abdi M. Ibrahim, member for Lafi. Honorable Kaluma, what's your point of order?
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Honorable Speaker.
Just a minute. Yes.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I'm seeking your direction on how some of these statements or questions should be dealt with. More so when the subject matter is cutting across more than one departmental committee. Mr. Speaker, a short while ago we had the issue concerning our maritime dispute. And though it properly falls within the remit of the Defense and Foreign Relations Committee, the matter is at hand, is a court proceeding or a legal process, which would be also before or better dealt with by the Justice and Legal Affairs Committee. As Speaker, I've heard the statement request from Honorable Sotsi, and I agree with you, it is a very serious matter. I saw a gentleman, a Kenyan, dig the grave of a person he said is his father and carry the skull around. And that desperation, Mr. Speaker, bothered me. But what bothers me is that I heard it being said that the subject eviction was following a court order. Mr. Speaker, you've remitted the matter to the Committee on Lands because it is a land question. But if the basis of that eviction is a court order, isn't it the kind of matter that should be remitted to the joint committees on lands and justice and legal affairs so that we treat the whole matter? And Mr. Speaker, I'm raising this issue because the manner in which the enrollment and land courts across the country is proceeding is bothering. Now we have Chesumei. It may be out of court or not. The other day we had Kilifi. Mau maybe never came from court. But you get orders, Mr. Speaker, coming across courts in a manner that suggests that court is not being very sensitive. Would I be right, Mr. Speaker, to request that if indeed the eviction, that is the subject matter of this statement request, arose from court order, then it be a matter the Justice and Legal Affairs Committee can, in expediting, the Parliament's duty on this, sit jointly with lands. Either way, it be determined first. I thank you, Mr. Speaker.
No, members, now, this is not debate. It's not debate. You see, the Committee on Justice and Legal Affairs may not sit on judgment on the decision of the Environment and Land Courts. So, and the Honorable Sotsi has applied his mind fully, consciously, and felt that now this matter can best be handled by the Committee on Lands. Since he has applied his mind and every part of his body consciously, and decided that it be directed to Committee on Lands, let it go there. And that is his choice. Honorable Undo, no, this is his request. It is his request. I don't want to be told. You see now, I don't want to be told there was also another eviction by another order, through another court order. No, I will not, because I don't sit on appeal against those evictions. But you as a House, through the various committees, are at liberty to examine some of those decisions and make whatever you wish of them. But let's get the Honorable Abdi Ibrahim seeking a statement.
Honorable Speaker, thank you. Honorable Speaker, pursuant to Standing Order 44.2c, I wish to request for a statement from the Chairperson of the Departmental Committee on Administration and National Security regarding the flood-related disaster in the large Mandera County, in particular Lafi constituency. Honorable Speaker, the ongoing heavy rains being experienced in many parts of the country have caused havoc among the residents of Lafi constituency in Mandera County, where floods have left a trail of destruction on homes and infrastructure and caused the death of livestock across the county in the last few weeks. The flooding situation has left over 2,000 livestock dead, thus depriving the affected residents of their livelihood. It is unfortunate that the flooding disaster has always been experienced, as an aftermath of the drought normally experienced in these parts of the country. The government has done little to caution the residents against the resultant losses. Honorable Speaker, it is against this background that I seek a statement from the chairperson of the Departmental Committee on Administration and National Security. In the statement, the chairperson should inform the House on the following. 1, the mitigation and intervention measures, if any, that are being undertaken by the government, including, among others, restocking of livestock through compensation of the affected residents, and 2, measures being undertaken to ensure the long-term and sustainable measures are put in place to caution residents of Mandera and other parts of the country against the perennial losses caused by floods, as opposed to reactive measures always employed by the government. Thank you, Honorable Speaker.
Statement will come from the chair for the Committee on Administration and National Security. Final one by the Honorable Sarah Korere. Oh, today you've really behaved true to type. You have become nomadic, Honorable Korere. I normally know you are sitting position to be the other side. But proceed.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Honorable Speaker, pursuant to Standing Order 44.2c, I wish to request for a statement from the chairperson of Departmental Committee on Administration and National Security regarding increased cases of insecurity in Laikipia County. Honorable Speaker, groups of armed militia have been terrorizing residents in most parts of Laikipia County, with most recent attacks executed on 14th October 2019 in Mirango and Wangwashe areas of Laikipia North and West constituencies respectively, where one minor John of ID number 24686464 was severely injured and 12 cows and 36 goats were stolen. On 15th October 2019, the same militia shot dead one Stephen Ali Apetet, who is a driver with the Laikipia Nature Conservancy. Honorable Speaker, every time the said militia execute these heinous attacks, they disappear into the expansive Laikipia Nature Conservancy. It is evident that the frequency of these attacks has been aggravated by the government's decision to disarm all local national police reservists who have been very instrumental in providing security in affected areas. Honorable Speaker, numerous efforts to resolve this matter have been futile, as exemplified by the fact that the government has deployed anti-stock theft unit of the National Police Reservice in the area, but the attacks have persisted and intensified. It is against this background that I seek a statement from the chairperson of the Departmental Committee on Administration and National Security on the following. 1, how is the government undertaking to protect the lives and property of the residents of Mirango and Wangwashe areas of Laikipia North and West constituencies respectively? 2, how soon will the stolen livestock be recovered and perpetrators of the heinous act apprehended? And 3, what mechanisms are in place to ensure urgent action to respond and end this menace, including a possibility of urgently rearming the National Police Reservists in this area? I thank you, Honorable Speaker.
Chair, Administration of National Security, I noticed that you are walking away until your attention was drawn by the Honorable Katola Metito that this one is directed at you. I think if you could stay a bit, because I know there's something that could affect you, but you will respond to this at an appropriate, when the House resumes. Response, Chair, Transport.
I thank you, Honorable Speaker, and I beg to respond to a statement sought by Honorable Didmas Paraza, which, Honorable Speaker, you directed that we respond within 2 weeks, which that 2 weeks, Honorable Speaker, ends today. And following your direction, Honorable Speaker, I would like to respond as follows. In 3 ways. 1, the number of buildings declared unsafe and therefore earmarked for demolition by relevant government agencies. Honorable Speaker, a total of 14,895 buildings, structures have been audited, of which, Honorable Speaker, 723 permanent structures have been declared unsafe, pending structural audit, integrity testing, to pave way for demolition, Honorable Speaker. And this, I have annexes, which I don't want to take the House, Honorable Speaker, that length process, but Honorable Didmas Barasa can then be able to consume. Second, Honorable Speaker, measures the government has taken against the properties and proprietors and owners of such buildings which have collapsed in the past and led to losses. Honorable Speaker, in the response, our response, Honorable Speaker, is that a total of 4,100 structures have been recorded collapsed. The cases have been taken by the Directorate of Criminal Investigation, DCI, and the Office of the Attorney General, AG, Honorable Speaker. And I've given the annex for the benefit of my colleague, Honorable Didmas Barasa, Honorable Speaker. And lastly, what measures have been put in place to ensure that buildings are safe and certified by relevant authorities before occupation? Honorable Speaker, I have about 8 answers, Honorable Speaker, of which it is annexed in this report or our responses for the consumption of the House and Honorable Didmas Barasa. And for interest of time, Honorable Speaker, I thank you for giving me this opportunity. I table.
Yes.
I table the response.
Leader majority.
Honorable Speaker, pursuant to the provision of Standing Order 42-2A, I rise to give the following statement on behalf of the House Business Committee following our meeting held on Tuesday, October 15th, 2019. Honorable Speaker, I wish to note that the House is scheduled to proceed on a short recess commencing tomorrow in accordance with the calendar of the House. As a result of this, the House Business Committee has not scheduled any business for next week. Upon resumption from the short recess, we hope to consider the following important bills. The Data Protection Bill 2019, which the Chair has tabled the report this afternoon. The Refugee Amendment Bill 2019, the Insurance Amendment Bill 2019, and the Competition Amendment Bill 2019. I hope the other relevant committees will have tabled their committee reports to inform debate at the second reading, Mr. Speaker. We will also give priority to various pending committee reports and motions. Scheduling of questions will also continue upon resumption of our regular sitting. Finally, Honorable Speaker, the House Business Committee will reconvene on Tuesday, 29th October 2019 at the rise of the House to schedule business for the rest of that week. I now wish to lay this statement on the table of the House. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Very well. Honorable Kanchori Namusi.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker. Honorable Speaker, I had done some amendments on the Public Procurement and Asset Bill, which, Honorable Speaker, has taken too long. The same was taken to Budget and Appropriation Committee, and the same committee seems to have been confused on some amendments proposed by Honorable Kuria, which the two were proposing very different things. So, Honorable Speaker, I seek your intervention on the same to just know why the same has taken too long. I thank you.
The Chair of Budget is here. Maybe he can confirm whether they were confused. The Honorable Kanchori Musi says you are confused by some other amendment. Maybe you can respond. Because I'm not able to address the issue of confusion. If the committee got confused, maybe but the Chair is here, he can tell us how much they got confused, or not at all.
Honorable Speaker, thank you. And of course, Honorable Kanchori is aware that the Budget Committee is composed of very eminent personalities in this House, people who are not likely to be confused by anything. But Honorable Chair, as you are aware, it came at a time when the committee was very busy, and we are in the process of considering many of those proposals that are before us, and I'm sure maybe in the course of the first or second week after the short recess, we should be able to deal with the issue.
Very well. Honorable Wanyonyi, you have an intervention?
Yes, Honorable Speaker. On 25th June this year, Mr. Speaker, I brought a question which was referred to the Departmental Committee on Trade, Industry and Cooperatives. Mr. Speaker, up to date, I have not received any response from that committee, Mr. Speaker. I'm just inquiring what is causing the delay.
The Trade Committee?
The Committee on Trade, Industry and Cooperatives.
Honorable Kanini Kega Madenge, the chair of the committee, absent having completed this period and having commenced his short recess. Anybody do deputy him? The deputy also appears to have commenced his short recess. Maybe the Honorable Wanyonyi, why don't we, you can raise this matter on 29th, so that when they are all here, so that we, and since the House will be again in active sittings, then we can have it responded to.
That's in order, Mr. Speaker, sir. I'm properly guided.
Very well. Honorable Mutua Barasa.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker. Honorable Speaker, I sought for a statement from the Departmental Committee on Administration and National Security with regard to the role of NTSA in interpreting the police accident investigation reports to reduce road carnage in this country. The vice chair committed to provide the statement within 2 weeks, but now is more than 1 month, and I know for a fact, Honorable Speaker, that the State Department of Interior is not to blame, because it's not the business of the person to be oversighted, but it's the business of the oversighting committee, Honorable Speaker, because there are very many avenues to pursue, especially if getting such statements is difficult, Honorable Speaker. So I am frustrated. I have raised this matter even at the committee level, and I know for a fact that this is a committee that has even seen more than 15 petitions lapse against time, Honorable Speaker. And I want to pray that you order the committee to provide the statement within the shortest time possible, and also order that we get a report of how many petitions, how many questions, how many matters that this committee was investigating and their status, so that we move forward as a House, Honorable Speaker. Our oversight role as a House cannot be compromised by either the incompetence, either the laxity of the people who are in charge of our committee, Honorable Speaker. But we need the answers to the very many questions we are asking here, Honorable Speaker, because you cannot take more than 1 month to provide a simple statement on the role of NTSA in mitigating against road accidents in this country, using the National Police Service Traffic Department accident investigation reports, Honorable Speaker. This is a simple matter that can be provided within the shortest time possible. So I need you guys, Honorable Speaker. I have raised this matter in the committee. The vice chair is my neighbor at home. I've spoken with him, but I seem not to get answers. I want to appreciate the chair for transport and infrastructure and housing, because I requested for his statement a week ago. He committed to provide the statement 2 weeks. Today, he has provided a statement. So what is happening with this committee on Administration and National Security? Maybe this House ventilates. If we are unable to serve this House, Honorable Speaker, we should dissolve this committee and reconstitute it so that we move forward. I thank you, Honorable Speaker.
You want to dissolve the committee? Well, or you are a member of that committee? But he also made a very interesting statement that the vice chair is his neighbor, and you are still not able to get responses. No, there is information being given. Let me get this information, which is perhaps useful for the House. Honorable Kaluma.
Mr. Speaker, the manner in which the Committee on Administration and National Security has been proceeding has been deemed by members to be delaying a bit. But this is because of the number of questions and issues being taken to the committee. If you've noted, Mr. Speaker, quite a big percentage of the questions members are raising are going to that single committee. Speaker, in the wisdom of the leadership of the committee, so that we can, expedite parliamentary business, we informally created subcommittees within the committee. And Mr. Speaker, we created 3 subcommittees informally for efficacy in the committee. There is a subcommittee created with the understanding of the committee for efficacy in charge of petitions, questions, and bills. And that is where even the statement request by my brother falls. Mr. Speaker, I'm in that subcommittee with my brother Didmas Barasa, who is my vice chair in that subcommittee. my vice chair. I think, Mr. Speaker, Mr. Didmas is my vice chair in that internal committee arrangement. How can Didmas be crying to the House over a matter he should be dealing with even in my absence as the vice chair, Mr. Speaker? I don't think we are proceeding right, Mr. Speaker, and I think all committees should is the vice chair in that subcommittee dealing with questions, bills, and statements.
No, but let me first of all hear from the vice chair of the main committee. But I appreciate, by the way, honourable members, I think if that committee has created subcommittees of itself, actually that's very good for efficacy. It's only that if you are the vice chair of the subcommittee, then you should. Then anyway, let's hear from Honourable Aluke.
Yeah. Thank you, Honourable Speaker. I just want to confirm to the House, Mr. Speaker, that indeed it is true that Ditmas is a vice chair of the subcommittee of the same committee, Mr. Speaker. So, Mr. Speaker, it's like he's shooting to himself, to the subcommittee where he's the vice chair, Mr. Speaker. But to finish, Mr. Speaker, I promised, indeed it is true that I promised to give a statement on, but we are dealing with the subcommittees to answer on that issue, Mr. Speaker. Thank you.
Honourable Barasa, you are not the only one with a point. There are several other requests. We will hear from you finally, the vice chair of the subcommittee. Honourable Pukose.
Honourable Speaker, I really am feeling the frustrations by Honourable Barasa. But issues which some of us raised, I raised an issue about a month ago. And this Committee on Administration and National Security, they were able to respond to my question within the stipulated time. And at each and every time, they were able to give back the information. So I think it might be some miscommunication between the vice chair of the subcommittee with the substantive chair and the substantive vice chair. So I think, Mr. Speaker, this is something that can be their neighbors, they can handle it at that level.
You see, but you see, the Honourable, we will want to hear a confirmation from the Honourable Mutua Barasa that he is a vice chair of the subcommittee, but he is taking issue with his neighbor, the vice chair of the main committee. So, and that the Honourable Aluke has said that the matter was referred to the subcommittee where the Honourable Barasa is the vice chair. So perhaps, Honourable Barasa, we should hear from you.
Thank you, Honourable Speaker. I am very surprised. And myself, as a person, I am ready even to resign my position as a member of Parliament if they will prove that I'm a vice chair of any subcommittee in this country. Honourable Speaker, is ridiculous, it is childish, it's unprofessional for a member to insinuate that I'm a vice chair of a subcommittee. Let them even produce the minutes where I'm captured as a vice chair. I am not a vice chair. of any
Honorable
committee.
Barasa, I will show you a quick way of getting out of the house. You must withdraw the word childish.
Honorable Speaker, you cannot allow somebody to insinuate things which are not done, Honorable
You
Speaker.
must withdraw the word childish.
Honorable Speaker, I will not withdraw. It is not right.
Honorable Mutua Barasa, if you are not ready to withdraw, out. You must withdraw and apologize. This is not where you are used to commanding the villagers. You will either withdraw or leave the house.
Honorable Speaker, I withdraw and apologize, but it's very irresponsible of a member of Homa Bay County and the vice chairman to claim that I'm a vice chair of a subcommittee. I've never even been a chairman, a vice chair of any committee in the whole of my life, Honorable Speaker. This is not acceptable, and they should also withdraw. If they are unable to substantiate, they should withdraw that statement, Honorable Speaker. It's not a
You know, this is a matter, apparently, honorable members, this is a matter that seems to be within the Committee of Administration and National Security. The statement was made by the Honorable Peter Kaluma by way of information to the House. And the Honorable Waluke, the Vice Chair, has indeed confirmed that the Honorable Mutua Barasa, you are the Vice Chair of that subcommittee. And by the way, it is something I have encouraged time and again, that committees, because there's a lot of business that is coming before committees, what I'm hearing from that committee is actually very welcome. It is very positive. It is important that committees define themselves so that you can be able to handle some, the businesses that is coming before you. I know administration, lands, transport. Those are some of the justice and legal affairs. You have a lot of work. So if the committee has decided to form subcommittees of itself, that is very positive. But if the Honorable Barasa doesn't belong to the committee, to the subcommittee, is it formed in people's minds, or is it something that is known? No, maybe you need to hear from the members of the committee. Honorable Dwele, you are not a member of the committee. Yes.
Speaker, if you allow me, this matter touches on integrity. Speaker, this matter touches on integrity. And Mr. Speaker, Honorable Baraza has rose on a point of order asking why his statement is taking long. Mr. Speaker, if you allow me, I'll even take it to the liaison committee. If what Honorable Kaluma is saying, and Honorable Baraza has said, that they must provide minutes of the subcommittee showing Honorable Dismas Baraza is the vice chair. If both the vice chair of the committee and Honorable Kaluma cannot provide, cannot provide, Mr. Speaker, then, Mr. Speaker, the two members must be named. So, Mr. Speaker, what Honorable Kaluma said and what you have said is true, that committees must work in subcommittees. And Honorable Kaluma is unanswered. He is unanswered, saying, I am the chair and the vice chair is Honorable Dismas. Speaker, this is a house of records. Either group cannot play ping pong on the floor of the house. So either group, the Honorable Kaluma and Honorable Waluke, they must substantiate and provide evidence of the minutes where Honorable Dismas, if that is found, then Honorable Dismas is out of order and he must be named. If the other two members cannot provide evidence, if the Honorable Waluke and Honorable Kaluma cannot provide minutes to show that he is a vice chair and a member of a subcommittee, then they all need to be named. But further, Mr. Speaker, just because I want to sit down, the Speaker, we have also, and I'm going to take it to the liaison committee, to your attention, that there are chairs of this House, and when a statement is sought or a petition is sought, a petition is sought from by a member, a petition is sought by a member, what they usually do, Mr. Speaker, and I have evidence, is that the minister calls. The minister calls, and without consulting the membership of that committee, the chair cancels the meeting. So, Speaker, it's nowhere in the standing orders where a chairman can cancel a meeting of a committee without consulting the membership. And Mr. Speaker, that is one. Secondly, Mr. Speaker, I have seen government agencies that are oversighted by this House writing directly to chairs of committees. Any communication to the August House and most of the National Assembly can only be communicated to the Speaker and the clerk, Mr. Speaker. And I am ready to table a document from government to a chair of a committee. So, Mr. Speaker, this matter between the three members of Parliament, Honorable Kaluma, Honorable Waluke, Honorable Baraza, is not circus. This is August House. Honorable Kaluma and Honorable Waluke, they are under obligation to provide minutes where Honorable Dismas is a vice chair of a subcommittee. If that one is ascertained, then I will be the first person to name Dismas Baraza. If they don't provide, then they should be named, the two of them, Mr. Speaker. We cannot take the House in circus.
Well, I see the Honorable Waluke nodding that Honorable Waluke, you want to...
Thank you, Honorable Speaker. I'm ready to be named because it is in black and white in writing that we divided 5 committees because of the bulk of work. And Honorable Ditmas is on the same committee with the Honorable Kaluma. It is true, and I'm ready to be named, Mr. Speaker, because I'm not lying. I'm speaking as the Vice Chair of Administration and National Security, Mr. On that subcommittee. He's the Vice Chair on that subcommittee.
What we want is the minute, if there are minutes, or if there was the committee met and formed subcommittees of itself. That is what is required. And the membership into each subcommittee. Yes, Honorable Kaluma.
Speaker, there are other members of this committee, including Honorable Mbai. We met as a committee, and this was the first item we transacted. Not even informally, but on the Ansad. Because we are saying members of Parliament are claiming the Committee on Administration and National Security is delaying. And Ditmas will confirm to you that following the division of the committee into subcommittees, all bills which were pending before the committee, we transacted all of them on one retreat. Today we are dealing with questions. The problem we have with our brother is that he will come technically and he leaves. But this is something we transacted in a committee meeting. We don't even need minutes. The answers are there, how all members of the committee are subdivided into subcommittees. The subcommittees met and designated their leadership as directed by the chair, as will be confirmed by the answer.
No, members. The Honorable Kaluma has talked about there being Hansard. No. You know this one, you are from Baringo. Here, business is not transacted that way. Now you are just raising hands. Now you see. Now, honourable members, I think on this one, we will wait for the Hansard. We will wait for the Hansard record because the Honourable Kaluma said, Honourable Mbai.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Speaker, for the opportunity. Mr. Speaker is a member of the Administration and National Security Committee. I'm not happy with my committee being under disrepute for the activities ongoing. Mr. Speaker, it's true that the committee under the chairmanship of our chair, the Honorable Koinange, sat and decided, due to the enormous number of questions from members towards our committee, that we should subdivide ourselves to our subcommittees, which will deal with specific questions and give reports for adoption by the whole committee. It is true that, Mr. Speaker, the committee that is chaired by Honorable Kaluma, I'm a member. Honorable Baraza is our vice chair. Mr. Speaker, the day we decided on this, allow me to speak. The day I would want to guide my brother, Honorable Baraza. The day we sat and subdivided ourselves to subcommittees, Honorable Baraza was not in the house, was not in attendance. Mr. Speaker, the day we did our elections in the subcommittees, Honorable Baraza was around. Mr. Speaker, the day we sat over these questions, Baraza was not in, and it's out of his absentia that his question, Mr. Speaker, could not be tackled on that day. The following day, the other day we sat and handled his concern. Mr. Speaker, he was not around, and the chair had to add some more members so that we can get quorum to handle the matter, Mr. Speaker. So I would kindly request Honorable Baraza, instead of bringing dispute to the committee on the floor of the House, for him to get back to the committee and help us transact business. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Well, I think, let me just make this communication. Honorable Aluke, as the vice chair of the committee, when the House resumes on 29th of this month, Tuesday, please avail to the House the records of how you divided yourselves into subcommittees. In fact, it may be something that other committees would be asked to emulate, if that is what you did, for efficiency. So, on 29th. So, further discussion on this, whether the Honorable Barasa is saying the truth or not, or maybe he has had momentary lapses of memory. You know, that happens in human beings. So that's quite possible. Yeah. You can be elected in absentia, but we just want to see the records. No. We can't go there. Let's just wait. Let's wait for the record. Honorable Aluke will provide the record, and the House will be better informed. So I think we should not let's not discuss that too much, so that we'll be able to make a decision. On that day, perhaps the Honorable Barasa will then see on record, black and white, that he's actually a vice chair. You know, remember, he has already said he has never been a vice chair of anything on earth. So maybe that record will now help him to update his CV. You know, so Honorable Aluke, please provide this information. The Honorable Barasa will update his CV that he is a vice chair of our subcommittee.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker. I stand guided, and I will make sure, even if it was tomorrow or today, I can avail the document, Mr. Speaker, where the subcommittees are and where the Honorable Ditmas Barasa is the vice chair of the subcommittee. Even today, I can submit, Honorable Speaker.
Honorable Dwele,
you have given direction. Unless Honorable Baraza retracts, he said if it's found to the contrary, he is ready to resign as a member of parliament. So, Mr. Speaker, you need to give him an opportunity, because if it happens the opposite, then his seat will be declared vacant. Because the route, the Speaker, the route Honorable Baraza now is going is very dangerous. So, Mr. Speaker, I think you can allow him to retract that statement from the answer. Maybe he was very emotional.
Honorable Bandi.
Mr. Speaker, although I'm aware that for the seat of Didmas Barasa to be declared vacant, he has to resign in writing. But Mr. Speaker, I think that goes a long way in telling us that as leaders we should be responsible in whatever we say. Because you see, talking about resigning is not a small matter. It's a matter that you should be driven by conviction, not just the spur of the moment. But Mr. Speaker, there is also a fundamental question here. How should members relate to their committees? Honestly speaking, even complaining about your committee, unless you have exhausted all the avenues within the committee, then you should not bring suckers in the house like what Honorable Didmas has done. I think this is a matter that he should have sorted out in his committee, even if he was not vice chair of anything. Since he sits in that committee, if he regularly attends the committee, it's a matter he could easily raise with the committee and ask why his question is not being addressed, yet others are being addressed. So I think, Mr. Speaker, something needs to be done about the relationship between Honorable Didmas Barasa and the committee. And if he's tired of sitting in that committee, I think Honorable Duale is up to the task, can swap him with some other member from another committee, because I know he is a member from at least the public image that he gives, he can be very active. I'm shocked that in the committee, the contrary is being proved. But I just hope he still has interest in that committee. Mr. Speaker, I think we can spare Barasa the agony of thinking of resigning, because again, the people of Kimilili, I'm sure, needs representation. And they chose Barasa for 5 years. Let him work for the people for 5 years. After the 5 years, they will be able to make a judgment, not based on his question. Maybe he was just angered. I don't know what annoyed Barasa, but I think he should hold his cool. Next time, he should not be so annoyed like he was today. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I just want to urge that we spare him. We don't take him the route of asking him to resign or even naming him. I'm pleading with the Speaker.
Well, of course, unless the Honorable Didmas Barasa wishes to withdraw that particular part of the threat to resign, if what is quarreling with is proved by, as has been said by the Honorable Waluke, then of course the rest will be up to Barasa, Honorable Barasa's conscience, and it could very well be now the ground for naming. Is it? If he doesn't resign, Honorable Barasa, you want, or you still want to maintain?
Honorable Speaker, I'm very clear in my mind. I am a member of that subcommittee. I am not the subcommittee's vice chair. And I would want the vice chair to submit the Hansard reports, because committees' transactions are held on Hansard. I want them to submit the Hansard reports. If they made somewhere over a beer and they decided that I become the vice chair of that subcommittee, that was never contributed to me, my honorable chair, honorable speaker. I'm clear. I attended that meeting in Mombasa, in Nairobi, in a hotel, where we transacted bills for the whole day from morning to evening as a member, not as the vice chair. That meeting, honorable speaker, was chaired by honorable Waluke himself, and not even honorable Peter Kaluma. So I want to repeat again here that you have given a direction that the Hansard report be tabled here. I am not the vice chair of that subcommittee, but I'm a member of that subcommittee. But I am not the subcommittee, and I'm not the vice chair of that subcommittee. And I just want to also tell my good friend that of course, Kaluma is after tabling that report, we will take them to a psychiatrist to check if they are in their senses or they are out of their senses. Honorable Speaker.
I think we'll just need to end that thing about the member for Bumula.
Thank you,
Mabonga.
Mr. Speaker. What I would suggest, because I also have an issue with the same committee, if indeed they have these subcommittees, they should make it formal and communicate to the House so that we know when to appear.
No,
because
you are wrong. You know, this is not. I know you have not been here long enough. That's not the way it is done. There is no need for us to be told in the House That's a matter for the committees. Once you form the subcommittees of yourselves, you don't have to come to the House to tell us now we're operating this way and that. No. This is the subcommittee, the chair of the subcommittee, the vice. That spares the agony of that. Just deal it. You just need to inform members of the committee. That's enough. Very well. You did not raise about a question pending. The member for Baringo South, is it? I think you have been burning to say something.
Yes, thank you, Chair. I'm not a member of that committee. Thank you, Mr. Speaker, but I'm not a member of that committee, Mr. Speaker. But my concern is the way Barasa, Honorable Barasa, is really feeling, because it's like he has been misquoted by the chair, and he was elected to that subcommittee as the vice chair, and he's not aware. I don't know whether standing orders is allowing that. You can be, yes, elected as the vice chair, but what happens when you are not informed also? Is it in order? Because it's like he's not informed. So, and he has reacted, and he has said, the way he has said, that he's even ready to lose the position, but he has not been informed. I think it's an opportunity that he can be forgiven.
Well, address it, Honorable Wambugu. What is it? You are from the same committee, aren't you?
Yes, thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. I rise, and the first thing I would like to do is to apologize to the House on behalf of the committee. I think this particular conversation we are having is not supposed to be held here. This is something we can deal with in the committee, and we will just make sure that whatever it is that the committee is supposed to do is done. Because I think we have now digressed into a situation where we are discussing our committee and how our committee operates in the House, and I do not think that is how we are supposed to proceed. That is just my opinion, Mr. Speaker. Thank you.
The issue is whether you have subcommittees. Honorable Ishungu, what is a...
Honorable Speaker, I think I just want to say and agree, Honorable Speaker, with the leader of minority, that one, we must have a system on how we transact committee business, especially if you're a member of a committee. I would not expect Honorable John Buddy, as a member of my committee, to come and raise on the floor an issue that touches on committee business that we can deal with in the House. However, Mr. Speaker, it also points, and I think Honorable Mwambu there was pointing to something. And I've sat in this chamber, you know, Honorable Speaker, I take time to sit here. Even as much as over the weekends I have time to visit other places in the country. But on Tuesday to Thursday, I religiously sit here, like my brother, Honorable, the good trade unionist here. Honorable Speaker, there have been concerns indeed, and the fact that the committee has even gone out to form subcommittees to deal with particular issues like questions and petitions, that there has been undue delay in answering of questions and petitions and statements from this particular committee in charge of Interior. And that is an issue, Honorable Speaker, that the House ought to discuss. And I agree with what my brother Wambugu Ngunjiri is saying, that maybe the issues now that we are discussing here are not really for the floor of this House. But substantively, more substantively, Mr. Speaker, the issue of committees delaying business that belongs to this House is a matter that we ought to discuss. Honorable Speaker, and I know again this is a matter maybe that should also be raising in the, and it has been raised, and the leader of majority is here in our liaison committee. The vice chair is here. Traditionally or customarily, it is a vice chair that you will ordinarily find seated in this House, Honorable Speaker, of that committee, in that committee. And I want to commend the vice chair for taking his time to sit in the committee. But I think the Security Committee ought to take their work more seriously, and particularly urge the chair in charge that even as you do subcommittees, the ultimate responsibility rests with the substantive chair and the substantive vice chair of that committee. That, I think, Honorable Speaker, should not be left to escape. And therefore, even as Honorable Didmas Barasa disputes his vice chairmanship or not, Honorable Speaker, it should not escape to this House that for him to get to the level, Honorable Speaker, of raising the issue on the floor of the House, there might be other underlying issues, and maybe I would want to ask Honorable Ngunjiru Ambogo and the other members of the committee who are here to sit down as a committee and really get to know what is eating into what within that committee. Because it's only this committee, Honorable Speaker, that I've had very many issues being raised on this floor, and especially issues to do with delays in answering of questions. Honorable Speaker, the other issue the Leader of Majority spoke to is issues of cabinet secretaries writing letters to chairs of committees, Honorable Speaker. I think for the time I've been here since the 11th Parliament, Honorable Speaker, it is customary that anybody, even cabinet secretary, should write. Even when you CC the chair, you write through the clerk to the National Assembly. It is true, indeed, Honorable Speaker, that there are chairs who either through phone calls or those letters that are being done like love letters between one person to the other, that some chairs are even calling off meetings, Honorable Speaker. And I want to indeed ask the Leader of Majority, if he has a copy of that one letter, he should also be kind enough to table that letter, either to this committee or to the liaison committee, so that, Honorable Speaker, if maybe a chair is doing that out of undying love for a particular cabinet secretary, then maybe in the liaison committee we can advise him or her that the undying love for the cabinet secretary can be dealt with outside of committee and parliamentary business. Thank you, Honorable Speaker.
Sorry, I can see there are a number of you. That is not the business, actually. But I just want to, perhaps for information of members who perhaps never were not either in the 10th, 9th, 8th, 7th, and 7th Parliament since multipartism, to just kindly bear with the fact that the docket within government, that when we used to have question time, always as the most number of questions is the docket of Interior. And we are lucky that, in fact, the last holder of the position of minister in that docket is a member of this House, the Honorable Kato Lemetito. And I'm sure the members of the 10th Parliament would recall with excitement the Honorable Kioni, Honorable Leader of Majority, Honorable Leader of Minority, the late Joshua Orwa Ojonde, the member of Ondhiwa, when he was assistant minister, he was literally on a daily basis, no single day. When you have a morning sitting, there's a question. Afternoon, there's a question. The next, the same. So it is something that it is maybe it's a problem with Kenya, that most of our questions have to do with chiefs, assistant chiefs, police, bound attacks, killings, cattle rustling, and all manner of things, even anti-corruption and all of them. Sometimes you may find all of those things coalescing around the security issues. So that's part of the reason why this committee, and I sympathize with the membership, and that's why I'm happy that the committee has actually formed subcommittees of itself, because it is a committee with most of the questions. I mean, just this afternoon, there were only 4 questions that were being asked today. If you check on the other paper, I think 3 of them were directed at that, they were security related. Even some of the statements which were sought, requests, again, same docket. So it is not something that it is not something that the committee just found itself dealing with today. It is something historical. And when we used to have ministers in the House, the Minister for Interior, I recall any number of them, the current Deputy President, when he was assistant minister in that docket, he was literally every day here. His ministers from time to time changed. Ole Sunkuli, at some point, Marsden Madoka, they would always be here. So we know that docket, because of the nature of, I think, the way we do things in this country, is a docket that attracts a lot of questions because of security, administration, and other related incidences around the country. So I wouldn't want to fault the fact that that committee has a lot of, indeed has a lot of work, particularly questions and requests for statements and petitions. Indeed, a while ago, the statement sought by the Honorable Osoti, the Honorable Kaluma was suggesting that it should be handled also jointly. So you can say maybe Honorable Barasa was going to be a member, you would have joined in. But Honorable Barasa, I want to encourage you to continue being an active member of the committee. It's just that that committee is quite busy, given the nature of the issues happening around the country. Honourable members, I think we can rest it at that. Let's allow the Honourable Waluke to bring the document that he has promised when the House resumes on 29th. Let's allow the leader of majority. Next order. Yes. Oh, sorry, Honourable Kato. Sorry, Honourable Kato Lemetito, you are giving.
Yes, Mr. Speaker, thank you. Actually, I had a statement to make, but this issue of Honorable Barasa has taken a lot of time. But I've also given him some wise counsel that when we come back, he will know what to say so that he will not be on the wrong records of the House. Mr. Speaker, yesterday, the Honorable Member for Tiati wrote a point of order and asked a question under the standing order by private notice regarding the recruitment of the Kenya Defense Forces officers, so many categories. And particularly, he asked the reason why the Ministry of Defense has reverted the recruitment centers from the sub-county to the county level. And Mr. Speaker, the Deputy Speaker who was on the chair ordered that the Cabinet Secretary appears before the Defense and Foreign Relations Committee this morning, which the ministry actually honored that. We had a meeting this morning at 10, and it was a matter of great interest. We were over 50 in this room, where we were able even we had numbers to transact business of the whole House in the chamber. Thank you so much. It's a chamber. And I just want to report that we resolved as a committee that the ministry revert back to the old system of having sub-counties as recruitment centers. And the CS, together with the team from the Ministry of Defense, undertook to convene an urgent meeting of the Defense Council for more consultation and communicate with the House on the decision they have taken, taking into account the directions given by the committee. And I'm happy to report, Mr. Chairman, Mr. Speaker, that they have met and they have totally agreed with the committee, and they have actually done a communication to Parliament. So a letter is already in your office, Mr. Speaker, that that advertisement has just been cancelled as per directed by the committee of this House. And new dates for recruitment are going to be announced. And the most important thing is the recruitment centers will be sub-counties. And other issues raised by the members who appeared before the committee will be taken into consideration. So that advert, where recruitment was to start on 28th of this month, and the recruitment centers were to be county headquarters, have just been cancelled. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Very well. That was a question by private notice. Yes, that's how for avoidance of other chairpersons, that's how questions by private notice are responded to with efficiency. Very well, I think we go to the next order.
Order number 8, procedural motion, exemption of business from the provision of standing orders.
Leader majority.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Honorable Kato has shown the way. But Honorable Waluke gives to Kaluma. Kaluma gives to Dismas. Mr. Speaker, I beg to move that notwithstanding the provision of Standing Order 42 relating to the reading and laying of messages from the President and in furtherance to the provisions of Article 132, subsection 2 of the Constitution, this House resolves that during the period of the short recess, beginning tomorrow, upon receipt of any names of persons nominated for appointment to state or public offices requiring approval of this House from His Excellency the President, the Speaker shall forthwith refer the message containing the name or the names to the relevant committee for consideration without having to recall the House for a special sitting. Mr. Speaker, this is a preparatory motion and also a contingent measure to ensure that out of the 10 days recess of the members is not interrupted, and 2, during the period of the recess, should any special matter requiring the attention of the House arise, the Speaker will be empowered by this motion and by this House to accord special attention without having to recall the House. The Speaker, invariably a number of appointments requiring consideration of the House have been made in the past when the House is on recess, and when that happens, Standing Order 61, subsection 2A, on a special motion requires that the Speaker must dispose of the matter within 7 days of receipt. So we are going for 10 days, and the Standing Order talks of 7 days. So that we are not catched by the House, we must make a resolution of the House. Therefore, this implies that the Speaker may have to recall the House within those days in keeping with the standing orders. And in this regard, the House Business Committee has deemed it fit for the House to make this kind of a resolution this afternoon for each time before we go on a recess. And Mr. Speaker, one of the matters that the President might refer to the House for vetting is the commissioners, for the chair and the commissioners for the NCIC, with a kind of, hate speech going around. I saw the CEO, the CEO of NCIC, speaking. And I think it's better the commission is in place and the commission makes a decision, not the management. So I hope the committee that will be given, most likely it will be the Committee of Cohesion, and the chair of Cohesion, Honorable Commander, must lead from the front in making sure that himself is compliant in terms of cohesion. You cannot be, you cannot be the chairman of the Committee on Cohesion and Integration in the House, and yourself you are not compliant. So I think as he vets, no, he's my neighbor, the chair. He's my neighbor, and he's a very respectable career civil servant, politician. He's our good chair. So as he vets the men and women that the President will submit when we are on recess, then all of them together, the committee and the nominees, must be compliant in terms of integration, in terms of cohesion. And of course, I'm sure also within these 10 days, the Building Bridges Initiative will also present their report, which again, no, their deadline is on 23rd of October, so they have time, and we are eagerly waiting. And I'm happy to report that Punguza Mzigo is dead, as Mr. Speaker, as I have said it. I said it from day one that it is dead on arrival. And I saw the honorable leader of that party who has no MCA, he has no MP, he has no governor, he has no senator, insulting me on TV the other day. But I want to tell him that I am a leader of a very serious party with 170 MPs. So, Mr. Speaker, this motion is important. And as we are away, I ask now the honorable leader of minority, who was a member of the House Business Committee, to second so that the names can go to the committee direct, any appointment that the President or the executive will make.
John Band.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I want to second
this procedural motion. Mr. Speaker, yes, always, before we adopted this new system where we preempt sometimes communication from the presidency, it may require us to come back even for a day just to receive a communication, Mr. Speaker, of the president's appointment, and then we go back on recess. I think that would not be a proper use of our time, and it would also be costly. And given that we anticipate some appointments to be made, I think it is proper that we allow you to refer this matter, any matter pertaining to any presidential appointments or proposed nominations for members to the committees. Mr. Speaker, one of the committees, actually Honorable Duale has spoken to, the possible appointments or nomination is that of Commission on National Cohesion and Integration. Mr. Speaker, the leader of my majority talked about the chair of that committee in the House. I think Honorable Commander has just been counseling, giving wise counsel to young MPs like Ndidi Nyoro. And actually, yesterday I now understood why Maina Commander has been counseling him. And he's doing a good job. I think we need to encourage Maina Commander as a father of these MPs to try, as he said, is the father from that county, to continue counseling them wisely. But Mr. Speaker, finally, on the issue of Punguza Mzigo, you know, when you make proposals for amendment to the Constitution, I think we need to understand, Kenyans need to realize that it is, don't make it so personal, to the extent that when it is being rejected, you come to public television and spew a kind of anger like someone has demolished your house, Mr. Speaker. And you see, you know, some of these lawyers think that Kenyans don't think. And when they come up with flashy, nice titles, Punguza Mzigo, they think Kenyans are so foolish not to read the content. And when I listened, in fact, Mr. Speaker, allow me to say this, I think the people of Nyeri are one of the most intelligent speakers in this country. I listened to the gentleman speak, and you can see quality of a speaker. How I hope that our counties emulate Nyeri County. I'm not saying others are not so intelligent, but the guy impressed, the speaker impressed me. He came out so well, so eloquently, and explained why they rejected the bill. And so, quote, let him hold his horses, and he should understand that the same way is followed by his third way alliance party. He should know that other parties also have a right to enjoy the support of members of that party. I'm chairing ODM party, and I would not want to see where my party members rebel against the party, like the MP for Malindi is doing. You know, it's paining me that I see a member of my party rebelling, and I want to thank all the MCAs elected on ODM ticket, wherever they are, for taking the decision that they have taken in rejecting this bill that was not well thought out. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Give him the record.
I second, Mr. Speaker.
Honour members, this is a procedural motion, and I propose the question which is that notwithstanding the provision of standing order number 42 relating to the reading and relaying of messages from the President, and in furtherance to the provisions of Article 132(2) of the Constitution, this House resolves that during the period of the short recess, upon receipt of names of persons nominated for appointment to state or public offices requiring approval of this House from His Excellency the President, the Speaker shall forthwith refer the messages containing the name or names to the relevant committee for consideration without having to recall the House for special sitting. Yeah, honourable members, I put the question, which is that notwithstanding the provision of standing order number 42 relating to reading and laying of messages from the President and in furtherance to the provisions of Article 132, Clause 2 of the Constitution, this House resolves that during the period of the short recess, upon receipt of names of persons nominated for appointment to state or public offices requiring approval of this House from His Excellency the President, the Speaker shall forthwith refer the messages containing the name or names to the relevant committee for consideration without having to recall the House for a special sitting. Will as many as that opinion say aye? Aye. As many as contrary opinion say nay? The ayes have it. Well, honourable members, of course, Honourable Mbandi did not, and the Honourable Duale did not address the issue, but I'm sure they are going to address the issue of how these counties are going to communicate to the House, to the Houses of Parliament that they have rejected. You know, most of them have been doing it on Twitter. That is not official communication. I think they should be told to now communicate, not to, even on TV stations, it's not communication. They still have to write formally and deliver the decisions of the respective assemblies. For certificates, yes. But I think, as you say, Honorable Bandi, they have done well. They have read through the small document and realized it to contain, it was just hogwash. So it's hollow, empty. Too many contradictions of one provision contradicting the other. I think it was just some excited youth who are called to come up with things. Next order.
Order number 9, the Representation of Special Interest Groups Laws Amendment Bill, National Assembly Bill number 52 of 2019, second reading, resumption of debate.
Honourable members, when the House rose yesterday, the Honourable Mohammed Sheikh was on the floor and he has a balance of 10 minutes. I can see Mohammed Sheikh there. Please, you have 9 full minutes.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I do appreciate that the minutes that were left for me is back on and I can continue contributing to this debate. Thank you so much. Mr. Speaker, I do support this report. This report on special interest groups is quite essential. It is quite important. And I do say that the Constitution of Kenya is quite clear in the sense that it has catered for every individual that lives within the borders and boundaries of this country. And therefore, in that sense, our Constitution is clear and outrightly giving the opportunity to every individual that belongs to this country. And to those that come to this country, obviously, there are others that cater for that. Minority and minority groups, women, the youth, and those who have got special abilities are important members of our society. And for them to be considered within, Madam Speaker, within the Constitution is quite vital. And therefore, this report has clearly outlined that people of special interest group can vie for offices, electoral offices, can vie for, unelected offices as well. They can vie for various positions in this country. And therefore, this report will ensure that the decision that was made in 2015, it was way overdue to 2015. That's about 5 years now. Within 5 years, and therefore it is timely, and this report will ensure that that has been put in. Given that I am carrying on from my previous discussion yesterday, I think I have clearly outlined the position that I am taking on this, and I do support this report, and therefore, without taking much time, I wish to say that I am glad I contributed to this very important report. Thank you.
Very well. The member for Ingembe South. Your card is on request. You want to speak to this?
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, I rise to support this amendment. It is the high time, Madam Speaker, we realize the potential which is in these mentioned groups, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, in most cases, the political parties, Madam Speaker, they tend to sideline those people whom normally live, the people in special need, Madam Speaker. That is whereby you will see the women, the youth, the minorities, and the people living with a disability, Madam Speaker, being sidelined when it comes the time of decision making, Madam Speaker. So it is a high time, Madam Speaker, for us to adopt this amendment, Madam Speaker, so that during the campaigns period and during the election period, Madam Speaker, all these groups can be included there, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, in many cases, the special groups, Madam Speaker, they are not valued in decision-making bodies, Madam Speaker, in bond agencies, in public institutions, and even organizations, Madam Speaker, whereby they are not recognized. They are not given any opportunity to make a decision, Madam Speaker. So it is a high time this amendment, Madam Speaker, be implemented. At the same time, Madam Speaker, in the Political Parties Act, Madam Speaker, when we come in the funding, Madam Speaker, during the campaigns, these groups, Madam Speaker, they are the ones which are normally looked down to. They are not given any fund, and the political party is expecting that person from that group, Madam Speaker, to perform well or to get that position. So the definition, Madam Speaker, whereby the political party is supposed to submit the framework of the way they have spent the money within the period of the 1 year, the 1 year of financial year, Madam Speaker, it will it will bear fruit, Madam Speaker, whereby the political parties will take care of these groups, and they will manage them both in national, national parliament, and even the county parliament, in the county government, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, also the same political parties will be in a position of ensuring that in their political parties, which they own, Madam Speaker, they have in the representation, the one gender rule, Madam Speaker, is represented there. Because in many cases in these political parties, Madam Speaker, there is no representation of the gender, Madam Speaker, because some of the political parties, they have centered their leadership in an ethnic way, Madam Speaker, or in an ethnic way of the way they do their governance in these political parties, Madam Speaker. So it will, this bill, the amendment, Madam Speaker, will help us or help the political parties to make sure that these groups, Madam Speaker, they are included, and no one will be discriminated when the membership, Madam Speaker, will be considered in this political party, Madam Speaker. Also, Madam Speaker, the way the IMBC will be allowing the political parties the political parties to vie or to give their candidates who will be nominated and be allowed to vie for the positions, Madam Speaker. this bill, Madam Speaker, is providing how the IEBC will be dealing with these political parties, whereby the political party is supposed to submit the list which has at least that the representation in both the genders, Madam Speaker, which is not contravening the Constitution, Madam Speaker. And secondly, at least the number of five persons who are living with a disability, meaning that they will not be left out during the nomination and during the submission of this list, Madam Speaker. They will be all represented. At the same time, Madam Speaker, this bill tends to monitor the political parties, how these political parties will be working, the information, how the information will be impacting or be impacted in their members, and how the citizens of Kenya, Madam Speaker, will be highlighted or enlightened on these matters, Madam Speaker. How the sensitization will be make or be spread across the country, trying to inform the entire population of the country, Madam Speaker, the need of having these people or the special interests, Madam Speaker, being represented in this elective post, Madam Speaker. So it is the high time, Madam Speaker, we give this amendment our full support, Madam Speaker, so that all the groups can be represented, Madam Speaker, and at the same time, Madam Speaker, these groups also will help us or will help the government, Madam Speaker, to make an informed decision, Madam Speaker. Because when we are making some decisions, Madam Speaker, these political parties are not in a good position whereby the people with special disability or special need, Madam Speaker, are not represented. These political parties will not be in a good position, Madam Speaker, to make an informed decision more than when they have these people, Madam Speaker, being represented. So, Madam Speaker, it is good for us, Madam Speaker, to look into this amendment, because this amendment, Madam Speaker, they mean better for the people who are living in the people in special needs, Madam Speaker. In most cases, the young people of this republic, Madam Speaker, they are not allowed even to vie for these political parties, political positions, Madam Speaker, whereby nobody who values you as a young person, who nobody normally who can believe that you can make a certain decision, Madam Speaker, an informed decision which can transform, Madam Speaker, this country, Madam Speaker. So it is good for this bill or for this amendment, Madam Speaker, to go through. And something which is of more importance, Madam Speaker, it is the language which is being used to address these people, the penalty which has been deployed there, 1 million or a jail term of 3 years. This should be enacted so that, Madam Speaker, the young generation, Madam Speaker, can be at liberty of vying for these positions, Madam Speaker. I beg to support. Thank you.
Very well. I'm sure the member for Ikebe, you are a living example of the young ones. You've been the youngest in the House to have been elected. Let me have the member for Mosop. Honorable Kiprui, two-way. It's the members who are leaving the cards here. Then member for Kadiani.
Yeah, thank you, Madam Speaker, for this opportunity. Madam Speaker, this bill, the Special Interest Groups Laws Amendment Bill, seeks to amend various laws. It is actually an omnibus bill because it actually deals with 7 laws that are being amended, 7 acts of parliament. And the intention is to give effect to Article 100 of the Constitution, which is meant to promote the representation in parliament of women, persons with disabilities, youth, ethnic and other minorities, and marginalized communities. Madam Speaker, a clear reading of these and also the amendments proposed also shows that it is also meant to promote the representation also in the county assemblies and also in public institutions. Madam Speaker, I have read through these amendments, and I've made 7 observations which make me inclined to support it. The first one is that it wants to, the laws basically want to give a clear definition of special interest groups. Almost all these amendments in most of the statutes are meant to give a clear definition so that the definition that appears within the statutes is the one that is in Article 100 of the Constitution, and I think that's something that is commendable. Secondly, Madam Speaker, is that I've made the observation that there is clear intention to recognize special interest groups that we have defined. So most of these laws want to recognize, to ensure that they are recognized within their institutions. The third, the inclusion of special interest groups in decision-making of public institutions, which is also commendable. The fourth observation I made is that it helps to improve communication. Madam Speaker, when you look at people with disabilities, for example, because they are part of the special interest groups, those that are deaf, Madam Speaker, would need to be able, there's also ways by which the communication can be done through sign language. So it proposes, the laws propose certain changes in the statutes that talk about communication and enhance them so that communication is done in such a way that even those that are deaf can at least know what is being talked about or what laws are coming out. Also, the ones with issues to do with sight would also get to benefit from the use of Braille. So I think basically it helps to improve communication for the people that are in that category of special interest groups. Madam Speaker, there is also the issue of facilitation of special interest groups in political parties, so that when people vie for political office and they fall within that category, then the parties are meant to ensure that they give them special or preferential treatment so that they can be able to also compete favorably with those that have no issues. Madam Speaker, there is also the issue of enhancing a change of attitude towards people with special interests, and that is also quite commendable. And finally, my observation is on the issue of capacity building of special interest groups. But Madam Speaker, I think that there are some very serious amendments that are hidden, I would say, in these omnibus laws. And I want to single out 2 issues. The first one being the amendments that have been proposed to the Political Parties Act. Madam Speaker, in this omnibus law, they have proposed a sharing formula for political parties. And the proposal that has been given is that 53% of political parties' funds be shared amongst the top 2 political parties. And that, Madam Speaker, must be probably on the understanding, top 2 political parties or coalition of parties. It must be advised on the current situation in this country, where we have one big party called Jubilee and a coalition called NASA. Unfortunately, Madam Speaker, this might not always hold sway. A time may come where the first political party, the second political party, and the third political parties are leaving each other in terms of numbers with a very small margin. Then what happens if we say that we are going to share 53% of the kitty from the political party funds to only the 2 top political parties? What if the third political party is just one member of parliament less than the second largest political party? So I think my proposal would be, and I'll propose an amendment to this if it's possible, that instead of saying the top two political parties share 53%, and then all the other political parties share only 20%, we consolidate the 53% and the 20%, and then share it proportionately amongst all the political parties that are represented in the House. I think, Madam Speaker, that will help us to ensure that even those smaller political parties are given an opportunity to grow. Here we are talking about special interest groups and want to kill smaller political parties. It doesn't make sense. So, Madam Speaker, that would be, in my opinion, I think there is some mischief. I support the bit where they say 20% of that fund be shared amongst the parties that are showing clear inclination towards supporting special interest groups. That's okay. But the top two parties cannot take the lion's cake and then leave scraps for the rest of the political parties. Madam Speaker, the other area of challenge I've observed is in the changes or the amendments proposed to the Elections Act. And here, the proposal is that parties, political parties, are supposed to ensure that 1/3 of the nominees to Parliament or the County Assembly are of either gender. Madam Speaker, I am the organizing secretary of the third largest party in the country. I don't think it is something that we can, there's no formula that you can use to do that. This House has attempted to pass the 1/3 gender rule, I don't know, for the longest time, and it's been very difficult. So how do you tell a political party to decide that a third must be of either gender? What formula will they use? Yes, we know the numbers. If you have 100, then it means 33 point something must be from either gender. But how do you determine the people that will vie? Because if people are vying for political office, then if you're doing a nomination, a free and fair electoral process, then you cannot say that this place we cannot have men vying. So, Madam Speaker, I think this is something that is really a challenge. I don't know whether if there was maybe a proposal of how this can be done, I don't know how in our political party we can be able to do it. And I don't think it works for me. And also the proposal of 5% of the nominees must be people living with disability. Madam Speaker, in my political party, we have people living with disabilities who competed and won political office. There are also those that we nominate. But when you say that 5% of the nominees whose list to be given to IEBC for competition must be people living with disabilities, how do you determine that? How do you make that happen? Who do you block so that we can give advantage to them? I think, Madam Speaker, this country in its nomination rules, for those that go into office through nomination, is very clear that we give bigger or more opportunity to this special interest group. So I think when it comes to elective office, when it comes to competition, I think this is an area where I would have a problem supporting. Otherwise, the general idea, the intent of the bill is basically positive, and with those remarks, Madam Speaker, I support.
Very well. The member for Kadian, you're the deputy organizing secretary of the third largest. You know, this is very serious. This afternoon we were having a lot of vice chairperson, vice to committees, especially to say I'm your deputy. Very well. The Honorable Kajwang, you've been here for long.
Madam Speaker, I'm pleased to see that we have a bill finally in the Assembly to operationalize Article 100. One of the things that I must note is that not many of the women in this National Assembly is speaking about this bill, because this is what they should have spoke about in the last 7 or 8 years. Because they have been trying to find means and ways of amending the Constitution. And we made a response in this assembly. We talked about it and told them that the Constitution already has given a mechanism by which issues of gender and issues of marginalized communities can be dealt with. And this is the only way in which issues of gender rationalization, gender empowerment may be found. All those attempts they have done, and they, with a lot of respect, in my view, wasted a lot of time trying to beat the horse which does not sleep in the same stable. This is what I would have expected many of the ladies in this assembly, particularly those who are inclined to pursue the question of gender, to come and support.
Honorable, I'm not cutting you short. Honorable Kajwang, this is a resumption of a debate yesterday, and if you're in the House, not that I'm protecting the lady members of Parliament, many of them spoke to this, Honorable Sarah Korere, I don't want to mention them, but you can carry on.
I appreciate that, Madam Speaker, but I have not seen the strength and the tenure with which I had members from, most of the ladies of this House pursue the question of amendments to the Constitution to provide for gender. That stamina is kind of lacking. But anyhow, I just want to make it clear that this is the only way by which, in the architecture of the Constitution, by which issues of gender can be mainstreamed in the Constitution. Madam Speaker, you know that judiciary took a rather dim view of the Constitution. I had many of them ruling, a lot of judges saying that the National Assembly would be prorogued or would stand scrapped just because we had not operationalized gender, not knowing that Article 100 is the only article which the Constitution expects this National Assembly to operationalize. Those others are in the hands of the state, and the Constitution is very clear that it is the state organs, the executive, that needs to operationalize those sections. It is only Article 100 which is in the hands of the National Assembly. And when we would have passed Article 100 and amended this bill suitably, in my view, the National Assembly shall have done its duty to operationalize sections of the Constitution which demand gender parity. But I think that there is need to add more value, to put more input to this bill. One of the things that I see that will give problems here is the definition of ethnic communities and minorities and marginalized communities. I can see that the bill has gone into a lot of strength, tried to explain what special interest groups are by lifting the constitutional definition of special interest groups. I see it in Clause 4. I also see it in Clause 7 in political parties. But I do not know why the framers of this bill are fearing the word tribe. Because when you talk about ethnic, we are really talking about tribe. So there should be an homogeneity of persons who speak the same dialect. For example, because when you say that ethnic and other minorities means a group that is not the dominant one in a given society, that definition is boring to me because it does not explain what it is that is this ethnic and other minorities. It should talk about the dialect or the tribe spoken by some homogeneity group within that community, because this is a big problem. You see, where I come, where my mother was lucky to have given birth to me, I live amongst some people called the Suba. I'm a Luo living amongst the people called Suba. But there is a lot of discussion as to what makes a person a minority and what makes a person dominant. It is a question which is left more on evidence, and evidence which cannot be precise. So I think that there is need for some more precise definition on this term called ethnic and other minorities, so that we know. And I want to, the chairman of the CIC is here. So I'll just allow him to attend to me, because this, I think, would enrich some of the things that he is looking at. I think that there should be a schedule. There should be a schedule to the act in which some communities are from time to time prescribed to be ethnic minorities. And that can be done by the minister or the chief of the CS in charge of whichever ministry it is, even if it is the Attorney General. There should be a register, some kind of schedule from time to time, which is brought perhaps before the assembly, and say now, Suba is a minority. And for the purposes of whatever it is that will be done, until that schedule has been amended, Suba will still be a minority. But if you leave it fluid to the whims of, for example, the political parties or people who make decisions, somebody can be a minority depending on the judgment of that political party. So I think that there is need for a schedule to explain the nomenclature that we have seen. But I think there is a problem, again, in terms of policy and lawmaking in this country. We like using law to police outcomes. You know, we make law and then force wananchi to behave accordingly. That is not how law is done. Law cannot achieve much if we use it to police people. What I mean is this, that if, for example, just like Member for Kathiani has said, you need a third or a percentage of people to be either of disability or people with youth or women, you can't police it. You have to use another method to be able to encourage that outcome to be a product. That is what they do in India. And I think we need to understand this as from a policy perspective. In India, for example, what do? They have affirmative action for girls. There are schools right from kindergarten to tertiary education. Remember, for this, I think this is out of order.
Order.
If this member can just
Honorable
allow me to...
Sosion, you are out of order to disrupt the member for Ruaraka. Well,
and another one is standing between me and the speaker.
No, the one is not in
okay,
any way disrupting you.
Yes, so this is the problem that we have from a policy perspective. We try to use law to drive a process. In India, what they have is they would, for example, have girls' schools, you know, to encourage women to go to school. They have them, the TVETs, which are designed for the females, right? And so in that case, you will find several ladies who will have graduated and who have capacity to be able to be in decision-making positions. But if now you tell a political party that we want you to bring number X, it is impossible. That is not how human geneity is done. So I think that we need to have a paradigm shift in how we do this thing. And give more budget allocation to things which are gender sensitive, things which are youth. Give more money to it. Let's see how we can encourage those people and empower them both economically and socially, so that they are able. Madam Speaker was just about there. I was about there.
You were about there? Where?
I was just about to finish.
Can I give you 30 seconds for you to arrive?
Yes, that would
be
great. Kind of you. I was just finishing this bit to say then that this idea of policing people really is not the correct thing to do. I think that we have to have a legislation. We need to move it to the budget line. We need to have institutions which will empower these people. And not leadership is not the only indices for empowerment. You know, everybody is talking about being in a political party, being elected, being this and that. Why are we not talking about people who should be in institutions, who should be in schools? Things are not about people who must be politicians to be able to make a mark in this country. I thank you, Mr. Speaker, but you may want
Honorable
to...
Kajwang, your 30
you may have
seconds. Honorable Kajwang, your 30 seconds at least. You are there now. Thank you for your, it was a good contribution. May I have the member for Kitui East, Honorable Mbai Mbithuka?
Thank you, Madam Speaker, for the opportunity to speak to this bill. Madam Speaker, first I raise in support of the bill. Mr. Speaker, the bill gives clarity to the definition of the special interest groups.
Honorable Mbai, as much as I appreciate the minister, I'm not a
Madam
minister.
Speaker, sorry. sorry, Madam Speaker. And it's not about the gender bill. It was just that I think I came from a meeting that we had more men than women. Madam Speaker, the strength of the bill is that it gives clarity to the definition of special interest groups in our country. Madam Speaker, the word interest groups has been taunted to mean more about women or the gender rule, the two-third gender rule, Madam Speaker. But on this instance, we have a clear definition of the special interest groups and where they fit. Madam Speaker, the other strength of this bill is its intention to institutionalize the affirmative action in terms of representation for the special interest groups. Because, you know, we've had instances where when we talk of the two-third gender rule, it's been seen to be more skewed towards representation for gender, either men or women, leaving out people with disability, marginalized communities, and the other special groups, Madam Speaker. But on this instance, we have all the interest groups have been defined and they have been institutionalized to be there in existence in terms of definition in the bill, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, the other strength of this bill is that it draws it away, it draws the whole discussion away from the traditional discussion between the two-third gender rule that has been seen to mean either gender, two-third of either gender in any formal meeting, Madam Speaker, as we've been trying to address the challenge in the sitting or in the constitution of the House, Madam Speaker. But on this one, Madam Speaker, the discussion is now being moved from the gender related matters to the special groups. A special group, somebody can be living with disability or challenged. It can be a lady, can be a man, can be even homosexual, Madam Speaker. The other thing about the bill, Madam Speaker, is we've had the perennial challenge that from the last House could not address this matter into conclusion. We had an attempt in last year in addressing this matter, Madam Speaker, but now the way it looks, it has full support because it has tried to, Madam Speaker, to explain, to speak to the matters which made or brought challenges in passing the bill in the other instances, Madam Speaker. But on this time, the committee has gone ahead and tried to iron out all the issues, and the bill seems to settle most of the issues that had caused the challenges in the other instances we've had time to discuss the bill, Madam Speaker. So, Madam Speaker, as I support the bill, I will speak to fellow members in the House and persuade them to support the bill so that we can settle the matter of the third gender rule vis-a-vis the Parliament being seen not to address this challenge. Thank you, and I support.
Very well, you support. The member for Butula, the Honorable Oyula Maero.
Thank you, Madam Speaker, for giving me this opportunity to also contribute to this important bill. This bill, Madam Speaker, operationalizes the Article 100 of the Constitution, and it has come in at the right time when we have been talking about gender equality. Madam Speaker, this bill mentions about women under special interests. Madam Speaker, I think it's a high time women were left to compete freely with men in whatever activities. We should realize that the population women in Kenya is now very high, maybe even more than 50%. So they should be let to campaign or to compete freely with men, and find their ways out, like it is happening now. Madam Speaker, I also want to comment a little on the spending limits, which has been brought in under Article 18. Madam Speaker, it may not be easy to control the spending limits in a campaign trail. It may not also be easy to carry out a proper audit to determine whether somebody has used excessive funds. So if not looked at carefully, Madam Speaker, this can create victimization by the opponents. So as much as it is in the bill, it should be looked at again to avoid victimization, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, I also want to mention a little on the use of bad language. This is common. We are still hearing it even today. But if not properly looked into, it might also create victimization. So something should be brought in to make sure that anybody who uses bad language is properly identified so that there should be no victimization, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, this bill is important. It covers 7 laws which were left hanging for some times. I believe now the population of Kenya will follow this very critically and ensure that during the campaigns or what, there's a lot of peace in this country. Madam Speaker, with those few remarks, I beg to support.
You beg to support. Let me have the member for Nakuru Town East, Honorable Gikaria. You can use the dispatch box if you do not have, or we'll give him the mic next. Very well.
Thank you, Honorable Madam Speaker. I want to thank you for giving me this opportunity to be able to give some input into this very, very important, I don't know whether to call it a bill or an amendment. Honorable Madam Speaker, I'm a little bit confused because if you look at the wording of this bill, it talks about the
Honorable
representation.
Gikaria, it is a bill. The representation of special interest groups laws amendment bill, National Assembly Bill number 52 of 2019, as in order
Thank you.
number 9.
Thank you, Madam Honorable Speaker. I think it's where the confusion was. It's written amendment and then it's a bill. But I want to support, and more so, Honorable Speaker, as what was being said yesterday before the plenary, particularly on the aspect of definition of what is a special interest group. And I think it is important for us to really look into that. And as Majority Leader was saying, we might look at marginalized communities, but maybe it does not specify. Maybe, is it within the country? Is it within a region? And that needs to come out very clearly because, Honorable Madam Speaker, if you look at the definition, then we have to be very, like what Honorable TJ Kajwang has said, Subas have always claimed to be marginalized when they come to that side. Another tribe will be marginalized if it is not within, and I think that is the most important critical aspect that we need to look into, and more so the aspect of what I was looking to, and the Independent Electoral and Boundaries Commission Act of 2012, where this bill seeks to amend, and the word, the first one, special interest group, means the following groups specified under Article 100 of the Constitution, and the first one is women.
And at some point, it might have a paradigm shift, and men will be more marginalized. We used to talk about the endangered girl child. Now it is a boy child. And at some point, even the men at some point will be. So I think it would be the best would be gender and not specific. But again, we'll be talking to the chair and see whether we can be able to, or maybe he can be able to explain. And of course, the amendment of the People with Disability Act, and this again, we need to look at our laws, Honorable Madam Speaker. Do our laws only meant for public institutions? Of course, the government does funding to public institutions. What of private sector? Yes, should the private sector not also be part and parcel of the laws of this country? Because we, under the public institution, then we can be able to use the law to be able to be in conformity. But what happens to the private sector? And the private sector, Madam Honorable Speaker, and you know, the private sector does employ quite a huge percentage of employment, inclusion, decision-making in this country. And so I know the private sector might have a problem, but at least as a country also now to start, we need to look into whether our laws, if indeed our laws do affect the private sector, so for example, the Companies Act, I think it's also the high time under the People Living with Disability Act, we don't only mention about the public institution and the percentage, we should also be including the private sector where we should make it mandatory for the private sector to be able to conform to this law, so that we don't leave this to the public institution only and other government agencies. And I think it is important we'll be looking at that when it comes to the where we'll be bringing some amendments. Honorable Madam Speaker, the IBC Act, again, the definition, and particularly in terms of nomination of parties, it is in line with that. And I think that is very critical, that the IBC must always see to it that once this amendment is done, then their nomination list is in conformity with Article 90 of the Constitution of Kenya, so that again we don't allow. I remember in the last Parliament, Honorable Madam Speaker, there was one where we had even a nominated member of Parliament who was disabled, taken again to court by his own party, again to be removed, and it was so sad. So I think it is important that the IBC Act, once amended, will be able to. The other bit is about improving of voter education. It is true, Honorable Madam Speaker, the IBC Act requires IBC to conduct voter sensitization, voter education. And most of the time, they come there and they just come with, without the people, the sign language interpreters. So you find, it is very nice these days if you go to so many government functions, you will find, and I was happy when I visited I went for the huge mass in Subukia Shrine, the National Prayer Day in Subukia Shrine. The Catholic have also made it mandatory that when the choir is also singing, we have the sign language interpreters who are also, so that those people who have hearing and visual impairment can be able to be together, because they are Christians. They need to understand what is being said, what is being, what is the song that is coming out. And I think that is what we need to do, that when they come for voter registration, Honorable Madam Speaker, they need to come with a sign language interpreter, so that those people with disability can be able to understand, particularly the ones with the hearing and visual impairment. Honorable Speaker, the Political Parties Act, again, it is but I don't know how they are going to implement that a party that has so many SIGs, elected members of, say, the county assembly or parliament, then they will get 20% of the political party's funding. I don't know how practical it is. I think it is important that it remains the way it is, because sometimes even if you would want to have that, and by virtue of that, maybe, I don't know if maybe an elected or two At what percentage? Maybe it's only one elected person or two. The party that has the most is only two. And then you take 20% of the political party's fund and you want to give to that political party. I don't know how practical it is, Madam Honorable Speaker. So I think it is important for the chair, when we'll be doing this, to really look at the reality of things when it comes to some of these proposals, because 20% of, say, what we are hearing now of around 4.1 billion is not little money. So I think it is important for the chair to look into how practical is it that because a party has the most SIG's representation in terms of elected members with under the SIGs. I think it is, and that again will bring a lot of issues. Assuming some of the minorities are not, they are in the coast and they are not in Rift Valley, and maybe some of those minority groups are somewhere in some province, the former provinces, then again it won't be, because some provinces is going to, and I think it is not also very practical. Honorable Madam Speaker, publication to ease people, the special interest groups, I think it is important, so that particularly on the political parties, and whenever they are making their publication, it has to be in line, so that those, particularly the PWDs, can be able to have the National Gender and Equality Commissions Act, the mandate to be improved, and I think that I totally agree with it, that they should be given an additional function, additional mandate for them to be able to monitor the implementation of the affirmative action. And I think it is important. Sometimes if you have a body that can be able to do that, then it's easier and more for us to be able, and of course, because this body, this commission will be making report to Parliament, then we can be able to make a follow-up. Honorable Madam Speaker, the election, the Finance Act, the Election Finance Act, again, it's a little bit of, I don't know why you should say that if again you give too much advantage to SIGs and in terms of spending limits, and you don't look, and elections are supposed to be seen to be free and nothing but free. So I think it is important for us to be able to have that. However, I can see, I don't know whether I have seen when I was looking at the memoranda, it says that this is a money bill. Yes, it might affect the monies in terms of maybe what will be foregone to be able to encourage and improve the people, the SIGs.
You beg to support, very well. The Honorable Wilson Sosion.
Yeah, thank you, Madam Speaker. I rise to support this bill and congratulate the committee for coming up with this bill. And Madam Speaker, when you talk of special interest groups, we are talking about efforts to bring equity. Madam Speaker, this country is one country that has progressed very well democratically compared to many nations. And I think this is a great stride to give effect to the provisions in the Constitution. The Constitution of Kenya, particularly the Bill of Rights, recognizes all these groups. And it would be futile if the political parties, the IEBC, and other implementing agencies do not actualize the objective of what is in the Constitution. Madam Speaker, I only wish, as I raised in a point of order the other day, the special interest groups here that is being referred to in this bill is considering only Article 100 of the Constitution with the listed groups. And this is nominations to Parliament and other bodies. Article 97 C recognizes one other group called workers. And Madam Speaker, during the debate of writing of this constitution at the Bomas of Kenya, workers agitated for representation also in this institution. And that explains why particularly I am here courtesy of Article 97. And Madam Speaker, you will agree, workers' voice is the conscience of good governance, and it's inevitable in any progressive democracy like Kenya, like we've done.
Very well, Honorable Sosion, even as you debate, since this is a house of debate and free to debate, you'll recall also the substance speaker made ruling, and of course communicate to you on that one. So, but it's a house of debate. You can.
Yeah, I do propose that we'll have to make that amendment so that this bill considers both Article 197, so that as a country we can progress and we have all groups on board. Otherwise, Madam Speaker, I support this bill. It's very progressive, strengthening the role of women. We cannot pretend that we have achieved and women in this country have attained the level where they can compete with men. No. UNESCO data is very clear that even in some parts of this country, girls up to 80% still suffer from female genital mutilation and other disadvantages. And therefore, strengthening the representation of women remains critical, and it shall be critical for many years to come. And of course, persons with disabilities, the youth, and all the groups. The big challenge of identifying which group is ethnic minority should not be difficult. If really we are a progressive country that believes in true and scientific data. In this country, we have a UNESCO office that is charged with this responsibility. And of course, ethnic minorities is a major focus by the United Nations through UNESCO. And even within the teaching service, globally, there is a campaign to ensure that all ethnic minorities have the necessary social services, including teachers, and they're very specific about teachers. And I can imagine non-ethnic minorities in this country like the El Molos and the Dorobos. And the question is, do they have all these? And it's important. The reason for mapping out these groups and identifying them correctly is so that there can be equity right across and inclusivity. Right now, this country is debating the BBI that talks about equity. We cannot talk about national equity right across without moving down even to ethnic minorities. And it's not going to be difficult. Some communities can masquerade as ethnic minorities when they are not. But I think this will be sorted out by proper scientific data and studies through the necessary government agencies that we have. Madam Speaker, I support this bill.
Very well, very well. The member representing the people of Kapeguria constituency, the Honorable Chanel Roto.
Thank you very much, Madam Speaker, for also this opportunity to air and also consider some issues that have been raised by colleagues in this House. Madam Speaker, I stand in supporting the bill because the bill has been here for long, as members have said. But before, it had some issues that people are waiting, and the time now has come when I'm seeing that there is now light at the end of the tunnel. Madam Speaker, when you talk of special interests, I think most of the time people think of women. And from the historical time, we had very powerful women who champions their way to this House. If you look at the likes of people like Phoebe Asio, Chemtai from Rift Valley, Niva Mwendoa and others, they came and they did very well, including those who are married to be ministers, including now Ngilu, Karua, and others. So I don't know why most of the time we refer women as the special interests, the weak people that cannot make. Unless, if they don't want, Yeah, I can refer even to you now, as you said to them, Madam Speaker. You're doing very well. Even if we read the way you chair things here, with the other men, you might be better than these people here. So why should we be all the time referring to say women need special attention when we know they can do something?
Thank you. Honorable Member for Kapenguria, we have an intervention by the member for Kandui. Let's hear what
Thank you. Thank you, Madam Speaker. Is the Honorable Samuel Moroto in order, Madam Speaker, by insinuating that you normally chair things and not the House? You do not chair things, Madam Speaker. Is he in order?
Our chair. Honorable member for Kapenguria, the member, I think, is interested whether I chair things, whether I chair the House.
Okay, thank you, Madam Speaker. You see sometimes you chair some...
Other things?
Yes. And you can still also do the House, as you've been doing.
Thank you.
That's what I was just referring. You know, I've been here longer than this young man here. And your age, you cannot compare with my age. Madam Speaker, is a friend there. Madam Speaker, I just wanted to add my voice by saying what because I've gone through the current bill, although maybe at the third reading, we might come with some kind of improving it better than it is now. But I really support it. Madam Speaker, the way the people, I can just say maybe they need special attention are the disabled. You see, like now, we had one, the 11th Parliament, and we have another one in this 12th Parliament. Why should we be having one and yet there are many? So we better improve them, increase even the number to be 2, so that another one can articulate an issue, and another one can come in and add what the other one left. Madam Speaker, this weekend I was in my constituency and went to a school called St. Francis for a school that is visually impaired. And we took a bus there, bought by CDF. Everybody knows the member representing them here, the number 001. And everybody appreciates what he's doing all along. And yesterday, even I gave him a communique to those people. So if there were 2, we had a man and maybe a lady, these people could be helping each other. Because they wanted, when we were there, they were asking him even to go to Kapenguria, go to Lodwar, go to all of these places. He cannot make it as a one person. So those are the areas that we can consider. And then again, we have special interests, these small communities that cannot even raise a ward MCA. Those are the people we need to, like now if you come to my constituency, maybe the community that is popular there is just the Pokot. But you see, we have Turkanas, we have some other groups there, of which they need also somebody to be included in the number, in the House. So, Mr. Speaker, Madam Speaker, those are some of the areas that I wanted us, this House here to address more than where we are. Otherwise, I support the bill.
Very well, very well. Let me have the nominated member, the Honorable Yusuf Halima.
Thank you, Madam Speaker, for also giving me this opportunity to add my voice and to support the Special Interest Groups Amendment Bill 2019, which seeks to amend various laws so as to give effect to Article 100 of the Constitution, which mandates Parliament to enact legislation to promote representation in Parliament of women, persons living with disabilities, the youth, ethnic, and other minorities. Madam Speaker, this bill was brought to the floor of the House by the chair of CIOC, the very able and committed Chair, Honorable Jeremiah Keoni. Madam Speaker, I happen to be a member of the committee, and for sure I can tell this Parliament without blinking that the committee conducted public participation with various stakeholders that included the IBC, former AG Professor Githu Muigai, Professor Yashpal Gai, Abdul Nasir, and other groups who came with a wealth of knowledge and contributions that have been considered in making the amendments. Madam Speaker, I'm a beneficiary. I'm here as a nominated member, and I believe these amendments are meant well for especially the women, the youth, and other SIGs. Madam Speaker, I can say that it is worth to note that the amendments have not tampered with the definitions therein, and the amendments are meant to empower SIGs through the parties, and this is very positive and laudable, Madam Speaker. The amendments are also meant to enable other political parties to benefit from the political party funds, and especially inclusion of political parties that show interest in the SIGs. Madam Speaker, the main intention is actually to operationalize Article 100, and since we as women have found it very difficult to compete and win in the field through a community that is very patriarchal, I believe once Article 100 is operationalized, it is my belief that we in the special interest group, we women and other marginalized groups shall be in a position to compete and win in the elections, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, I believe that the committee did a lot, and for sure,
let me have the member for Lari, the Honorable Mwangi Mburu.
Thank you, Madam Speaker, for giving me that opportunity to contribute to this bill. I'm now well versed to this bill, and my